welcome everyone to a long time in the making episode of Anime Fans Against Anime. I'm Reed,
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.
and this is the conclusion of our month of Anime Roulette. Which, if you haven't seen it, you can head over to. If you're not already on YouTube, search Anime Fans Against Anime. We have a YouTube video up where we randomly picked anime using... Now, we couldn't really use random.org because we had to pick from every anime. So we just did like a game of anime music quiz where we didn't answer anything. And we picked a list of random anime, and we draft style picked 3 each that we would watch over the month of June 2020. And disclaimer, it's July 2nd, not July 1st. We were busy yesterday. But basically, we have just finished our month of watching. And I'll go ahead and list through the ones that we picked in the order they were picked for anyone who hasn't seen that video and doesn't care to go back and see the process. So, first, Richard got Compellion. Michael got Armed Girls Machiavellianism. And then I picked The Future Diary. And then went back around, Richard picked Spider Riders. Wait, was it a specific season of Spider Riders, Richard?
We'll get to that when we start.
Okay. Some form of Spider Riders Richard has watched. Michael got something called, like, Late Night Genius Bakugo?
Bakaban or
Bakuban.
Kanbanya, but Bakaban is the famouser name.
Okay, and then I got Wakako Zake. And then finally, Richard picked Blood Blockade Battlefront. Michael picked Beat the Vandal Buster. And I picked Yadamon Magical Dreamer. So we're going to go through them in that order as well. And this might be a 3-hour AFAA episode. But, you know, it'll be fun. I guess let's not waste any more of our listeners' time. Richard, tell us about Compellion.
So, Compellion is, like, to be honest, when I first heard about this show, this was, like, way back when like, I was, like, becoming a real anime fan, I guess, earlier. And, I had heard about the show, I had put it on my plan to watch, and it had been sitting there forever. So when we rolled it in the thing, I was like, yo, I gotta go back and watch this, because I had watched, like, the first, like, episode or two, and did not, like, understand anything or care. So the thought in my head was, I'll come back when I'm an experienced anime viewer. And, so I did. And oh boy, let me tell you, it has paid off very well, because I really, really, really like this show. It was a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun to go through.
Did your experience as an anime viewer help you enjoy it?
Absolutely, because there's stuff in there that I probably wouldn't have, like, gotten or understood if I wasn't an experienced anime viewer. So
Interesting.
Compellion is a show about 3 girls who go and explore the nuclear wasteland of what used to be Tokyo. And so apparently, like, and here's the, like, what is it? I guess the lore fun fact. In 2016, Tokyo, or a city near Tokyo, had built a nuclear power plant, and something bad happened, kind of like what Fukushima kind of dealt with or whatever. And well, that made the entire area irradiated. And well,
Richard, I'm just glad that you didn't say we did it. As soon as you said the ruins of Tokyo, I'm like, oh no. America's gonna be the bad guy.
So, Richard, why do these 3 girls think it's a good idea to explore this irradiated wasteland? Aren't they going to get cancer?
Well, see, Michael, here's the fun thing. That is their job, to explore the irradiated wasteland by the Japanese Self-Defense Force.
I thought you were going to say it's their job to get cancer.
Well, see, they won't get cancer because they are specially engineered, like, genetically engineered, like, super baby children, girls, that do not get affected by radiation or, like, real other effects. Like, they're, like, literally, like, superhumans or super mutants, I guess, from, like, Fallout, if you want to be super, you know, gamer mode. But they are like literally superhumans. They're strong. They're like 10 times stronger than the average human. They can take like 10 times more radiation. They can like everything is basically 10 times a normal person. And they're all cloned off of like a real person that not like a real person, but like a real person, quote unquote, that lived in Japan at the time or whatever before the disaster occurred. So then that kind of plays in later on, but so their job is to go and explore this wasteland and find and like help people who are still kind of out there, because the Japanese government did not do a good job of making sure that their citizens were safe and okay to go home after they messed up. So it's their job to go out there. Oh, I forgot to mention, their like whole thing is that they're like basically like a class, I guess, in that sense. Like, you know, like a Japanese class, like high school
This is
kids.
school?
Sort of.
It's a field trip. Go to the wasteland.
That's what they call it a lot. They said we're on our field trip right now. Our never-ending field trip. And but they get out there. The three characters are one is like the Seto Kaicho. Another one is just like I guess they're both. I guess the other two are just like underclassmen or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, senpai, you know what to do, and everything." And they're like, "Yeah." And literally, like the Seto Kaicho basically does like all the work for like 90% of the show, and they just kind of are there to be there and help out a little bit. One of them is actually a little more is like useful, but another one is just like absolutely just doesn't do anything. But that's okay because she's Moe, and that's all that really matters in the end.
So, Richard, do they all look the same since they're all clones?
No, because they're all cloned off of different people. So they absorb the personalities and other things. I don't know why. They never. They didn't explain that much.
If you're making clones, why bother to sample all those different? Just make them from one really good one.
Yeah, Jango Fett.
Jango Fett, prime specimen.
That's what I thought, but I guess the Japanese government thought, no, it's got to be different.
And so, how many? It's about these three, but are there like a bunch more of them elsewhere of these clones, or did they only clone 3 people?
So there's like a whole like I said, like a whole like class. I guess maybe like even a whole school. They don't really say how many there are in total, but like they have like a couple of flashbacks and things or whatever. And like they were like in a school, I guess, at one point or something like that, trying to learn about, you know, survival and all this other weird stuff. And like I don't know how many there are, but like I said, there's like a whole class level where there's like a third-year students, second-year students, and then I think there might be some first-year students too. But you know, that's just how they kind of did it. And their boss is the vice principal, not the principal, the vice principal, which I think is the most power I think I've ever seen a vice principal have.
Does the principal show up at all, or is it...
No. It's just the vice principal, and he's like some super guy in like the JDSF or whatever, and he's like we're gonna make sure everyone comes home safely because like his wife and daughter died in the nuclear event or whatever. But
so was it just radiation leaking everywhere, or was there an actual explosion?
They didn't really go into that much and that far. I assume there's an explosion because there's like rubble and stuff, and there's also like I guess radiation everywhere too. So, but it's they really didn't go too much on like what happened before. They just said that they built a power plant, something very bad happened, and now there's radiation all across Tokyo basically, and these girls are out to help fix it. So along the way, the girls meet like all sorts of different fun individuals living out there, mostly like ex-convicts who ran away from the prison when all the radiation started going off. And they're like, "Oh, you gotta help us," and they're like, at the same time, "No, don't help us. We gotta die here because if we go back, we're just gonna go to jail." And they have like a long like internal, I guess, sort of conflict throughout most of the episodes they run into them or whatever. That like, I don't want to go back, but I have to go back, and that happens for quite a bit. But later you find out that there is some secret like private company that has like here comes my military nerdiness, but has like the I don't know, like the B-2 bomber. If you don't know what that is, go look it up at home. It's like that big fancy stealth plane or whatever that flies around. And in one of the episodes, they're like talking on the radio, and they're like, "There's some giant crow outside, and it's just flying around." And they're like all freaking out, and they're like, "What is that crow?" And then like it takes them a while to figure out that, hey, that's not a crow. That's a plane, and it like lands in the city or whatever.
Had they just never seen a plane before, or was it too far away?
I guess they're just they've never seen a plane before. But
that crow makes really weird noises.
Makes big old jet engine noises going whoosh across the sky. Because there were like birds following it, which also didn't make sense. Because I feel like if a bird was gonna fall, it'd be like either cooked or either sucked up by the engine and then sped out and messing up the plane. But
strike.
But it turns out this company or whatever that's been flying around with this plane is dumping more nuclear material into Japan to just be like, hey, this place is already irradiated. Let's just add some more because no one will ever know. Which is, I think, a pretty good idea in the long run. Is if these people like did not send like these like super genetic humans in to actually look for more people, but they get caught, they get found out, and they shoot them down. Like the girls shoot down the plane or whatever, and they're just like, all right, that'll not happen anymore. And
Richard,
it doesn't.
What did the girls use to shoot down the airplane?
A Stinger. Or is it M71? I don't remember the numbers. M91. Anyway, it's an anti-air weapon. But we'll that's not here or there. They shoot down the plane. That's when they find out that it's some company called Yellow Cake, which is really funny because it's like yellow cake uranium. But they shoot them down. They're like, oh, these people are dumping things here. But it also turns out that there's another group that's inside there that's taking that material that's being dumped and collected. And they're like, why is someone taking all this nuclear material that, like, because like there's the Japanese government who's trying to sort of clean up or whatever, and that's disappearing. But there's also a company who's coming in and just dumping more or whatever, and that's also disappearing, I guess, in the next episode after that. And they're taking it away. And it turns out to be, this is like almost like the rest of the base of the show, because like episode 6 forward is like all this, where there's this group, and it is the first division of the JSDF or whatever, which were like the original first responders to when the crisis happened, and the Japanese government just left them there, and so they're like, we're just trying to protect our home and clean up the mess, and that was the kind of message they got at first, but then it turns out they're like attacking the girls who are investigating the land, and they're like, why are they attacking us? And it's like, no, the Japanese government couldn't be mad, or I guess like the Japanese soldiers couldn't be mad they just got left there or anything. That wouldn't be the first thought that came to your head, but the Japanese people that got left there are kind of mad. So what they're actually doing is they're building like a sort of not like a bomb, but they're using the radioactive material to try and build like I guess not even, I don't even call it a bomb, like a natural nature effect or whatever, using like, they don't really explain too much, but somehow they want to take this radiation and push it to the rest of Japan and the rest of the world or whatever. And
they're just like a dirty bomb? Yeah,
like a dirty bomb. So they're like, we had to suffer here, so now everyone else has to suffer too. And they're like, we can't let that happen. So the girls are like, we gotta work together or whatever to stop this. And they meet like some dude, some crazy like science dude who has like some crazy like, I don't even know how to explain it, like science bunker in the middle of this like broken wasteland or whatever, and he's like, "This is my home. Welcome. I live here with my good friend who is the coolest guy in the show, and this other dude who's a complete pussy, and his daughter who's pregnant." And and it's like, okay, and this guy's actually wait.
Which one of those two got the daughter pregnant, Richard?
That was my first thought, but they don't answer that until like episode like 12 or
Was
11.
it her dad? Or the old scientist?
Well, to be honest, they don't really say till episode 12, but it was one of the soldiers that was stationed out there with who were like, trying to survive / push the
They
dirty
let him in
bomb.
the bunker?
Because apparently they weren't attacking them or attacking like people out there. They were helping people out there until like the girls showed up, which I forgot to mention. The reason the name of the show is called Capellion and the name of the girls are called Capellion because that's the show. And that's just what the secret super children are called. But in this sort of thing as we're going on, the girls like they have to figure out a plan of one, stopping the dirty bomb, and two, getting this like people who are like somewhat sane back to the normal world or whatever. And that's most of what happens for the rest of the show. And it starts off with the one girl who's like Moe or whatever getting captured like right off the bat by the JDSF squad or whatever. And like she goes outside and she's like, "I'm gonna go open the door real quick. Someone's at the door." And little you know that it's those guys, and they just take her. And she's like, "Help me." And they're like, "We'll help you, but you're gonna have to wait." And then they drive off with her, and they're like, "We'll come back for you." So then she recruits help from another Capellian guy who's just like part of the team. He's part of the cleanup crew, because these girls are part of like the medical rescue crew or whatever, but this guy's part of the cleanup crew or whatever that they meet. And he's a interesting guy because when they say cleanup crew, he like does two cleanup things. He like helps clean up the radiation, but he also helps clean up the trash that the radiation created. And by that I mean like the bad people that are running around there doing stupid things or whatever. Because he's got like all these weapons and stuff, and he's an interesting guy. And they're like, "Okay, let's go get these people out of here or whatever, or our friend back." And they like drive to the fancy place or whatever in an armored car, by the way, which I'm like, I don't know where they got it from, but it was still kind of cool to go pick up their friend or whatever. And they're like, "Hey, give us our friend back." And they're like, "No, we're just gonna like keep you and probably kill you now because you just decided to come here or whatever." And well, they start shooting at him, and the Seto Kaicho girl tries to go fight him, and I'm like, "Don't do that." But she's like, "I'm gonna do it," and gets out, runs into like the leader of these I guess soldier thugs in the wasteland. They're like, "Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up?" And she's like, "You know what? You still have the look of a human." And this man is like running around this area without like an oxygen tank or anything, and he takes off his face mask, and he kind of looks like one of the ghouls from Fallout, where he's like missing teeth and like a big old melted face, and he's like, "Ah, you think I look like a human, girly?" And she's like, "Yes, and I believe that we can still be friends." And like reaches out his hand, and he grabs her hand, and he's like, "All right, everyone, I got her by the hand." And they have a tank, and they're like, he's like, "All right, now kill this girl and me at the same time." And the tank fires on them, and Seto Kaicho gets hurt pretty badly, like bleeding badly, and they're like, "All right, now we gotta retreat." So they what is it? During all the commotion, the one girl who's like got captured before is kind of running around. She's like, "Oh, we gotta help her," and she kind of gets free, and she goes help the Seto Kaicho put her back in the armored vehicle and some other stuff, and they're about to get out of there, but the one girl who helped her or whatever, I don't remember what she did. She like ran off again and did something stupid, and got recaptured again. So the Kaicho wakes up back in the vehicle, being like, "Did we get her? Is she with us?" And they're like, "No, we actually just left her back there again." And they're like, "Oh, why did we do that?" And she's like, "She was slowing us down. She wasn't coming fast enough. She was like looking at some pretty butterflies or something." And they go back, so she's still like captured for a good bit. Trying to think what else happened. So then we continue on to the next part of the fun series. Are there any questions? This is
I have a question.
Yes.
What kind of tank was it?
It was the Type 10 Japanese tank, which is one of the newest models that came onto the line, like in 2012.
Nice.
Anyway, so basically, to be honest, I don't remember. No, I do remember how she comes back. They go and get her back again because they do the same sort of thing again. This time, she actually comes along with them, and like they basically like drive her home or whatever. But when they're like going to go get her again, they run into another pair of Capellians, and these are twins, sort of. Like they don't really explain. They call them twins, and they call them sisters, but they're definitely different people and made from different clones. Anyway, these two clones are like, "Hey, what's up, everyone? How y'all doing?" And they're like, "Good." And they're like, "You know what? I don't like you." And you know what? They start trying to fight the other Capellian girls who are trying to save people. And they're like, "Why are you doing this?" And they're like, "Because why are we even helping humans to begin with? We're not people. We're just like super people. So why should we help them?" And they're like, "Because it's your job to help them." And they're like, "No, we're doing this because we want to." So this one pair of Capellian twins is working with the JDF or the like JDSF that got like stuck out there or whatever, that one to set off their weird radiation bomb or whatever, and they end up having to fight them for back and forth for most of the show. And halfway through, I didn't expect this, but they start talking about like, "Oh, every Capellian is made special," and I think this is why they made them all cloned or whatever, specific things or whatever, because every Capellian has something that's unique about them. Like the Capellian guy that they run into, his specialty is that he can build things good, and the one, what is it? The one Seto Kaisho, she's like she's 10 times more athletic than the like average person, and then like 5 times more athletic than like the regular Capellian or whatever. And was it the one girl who I forgot to even mention? The one girl who's like somewhat useful or whatever. She's kind of sitting back at the base for most of the show, trying to help this like pregnant woman not be pregnant and have a baby on the floor. So that's going on. She anyway, the two twins that they run into or whatever, their special ability is one is like super strong, like Superman strong, can like pick up gigantic rocks and almost buildings, and the other one can shoot lightning. And I was like, how? I don't know how you genetically engineer someone to shoot lightning, but I'm like, okay, that's cool. But either way, they get into their thing or whatever, and they're coming to the like near end or whatever, and they have to make a plan. They're like, "We got to get rid of these girls, and we got to get this pregnant lady to the hospital." All while at the same time, the prime minister is like, so I forgot to mention the prime minister, but he's like some little short dude or whatever who like was the minister of defense that originally left the JDSF dudes. Are like, "You guys are gonna do a great job." Then gets on a helicopter 2 seconds later, flies away from the city before the before the reactor at the plant has a malfunction or whatever, because they kind of knew it was coming and people were trying to get out of the city, but not everyone got out, and some people decided to stay in because they're like, "I can survive radiation. I'll go into an underground bunker and survive, like in Fallout." and they leave or whatever, and the prime minister is like having some super party or whatever, World Expo, or like all the world leaders are there, and he's like, we can't let Japan look bad, so we need every helicopter, plane, and everything to be right here on alert, doing like trick shows and stuff, 24 hours. And the other Capellian guard's like, can you just like send this one helicopter to get this pregnant lady out? And they're like, no, you have to get her out on your own. And that's what they do. So they come up with a plan to, I guess, sort of fix an old train that was running or whatever to like make it go through and run through Tokyo and like run it all the way to the closest city or whatever nearby. But they have to figure out, I guess, sort of how to first one get it working, and two how to get rid of the I guess the trouble that's been following them, because the two sisters at first their idea was, we're just gonna mess with you, and we don't want this pregnant lady to have her child or whatever, and we're gonna kill humans. But then it turns into them being like, you know what, we hate you Capellian trio, so we're just gonna kill you instead. And they have this big old battle or whatever, and they're like, the lightning girl shoots lightning, the strong girl starts kicking people, people get hurt a lot. There's also lots of deaths in the show. I wasn't expecting like as many people to die. I was like, oh, they're gonna help people, but like this like little girl has a family or whatever, and like both her parents die or whatever somewhere through the show. I was like, that's really sad or whatever. But
are there like a bunch of like main character deaths, or is it more just like the people they run into are dying and they're like, shit sucks, man?
It's just people they're running into. There is like a one sort of main character death, which is the one Capellian dude or whatever who is like good at bombs, and the dude who they asked for help, whoever, to come clean up crew or whatever, and he has a sad death or whatever, but he was like on the fence about like, should I help humans or should I not help humans? Because we're just like tools and puppets. They don't really like, what happens to us after we're done with this. They're gonna just get rid of us and forget about us, and I don't think they would do it. I think they'd probably just like, you can just go live your normal life if you want. But thing you find out later is that they can't really live a normal life because of all this experimental genetic engineering things that have been done to them. They have shortened lifespans, so they will just die like randomly someday, like kind of like how people do, except at a younger age or whatever.
People really do that.
But they have some crazy battles. There's this big spider robot that shows up. I'm sorry, Michael. That's two things with spiders in it. Like I thought it was pretty cool. It shoots like flames and like has like a flamethrower attached to it, and that's a pretty cool robot or whatever. But Lightning Girl shoots lightning everywhere, starts fighting. The one girl who is like got captured or whatever turns out to be like some super special one or whatever, who can make like bubble shields and protect people. And the pregnant lady and all of them get on the train. They get on the train, they go through, and they make it, and they survive. And it's a very, I guess, happy and nice ending from everything. I guess, you know what, now I think about it, a couple people die. So, like, the main scientist dude dies, which is kind of sad, because he's like, I just wanted to help everyone. I'm glad at least the baby and the mother got out or whatever, and they're like, okay. And then he dies, and then the one, like I said, the one kid or whatever who was like the other Capellian dude dies because they like try to lift up a beam or whatever, and the one sergeant dude who I said before was like,
wait, he dies trying to lift a beam?
Yeah.
Like, he's just too heavy, dead. Like, what?
Well,
did it fall on him?
Well, because the beam isn't too heavy, isn't what kills them. It's the gas, or I guess, or the, like, not gas, but the radiation that's chasing after them. Because like there's like a race against time. They have to get out of town because the bomb kind of goes off, and they're like, which isn't a very like good thing. The bomb sort of thing goes off, and there's like radiation running out, but I don't think it'll go. I don't think too far, and I think because they were like, we did this right, but I don't think they did their math right, which I think they're just like, you know, this will be fine or something. we don't have to worry about it too much. Anyway, but the radiation ends up killing the guy, and the one dude from before who is like, I'm the captain or whatever, ha ha ha, look at my ugly face, I'm a ghoul, ha ha ha, comes and helps him like pick up this beam or whatever that's gonna crush the train. They're like, oh, it's one of those heartfelt moments, and he's like, let me die a human being or something like that, and then he dies. And they get out to the thing or whatever. They get to a location outside the city. The two crazy sisters who are like we're gonna kill you, Capellian trio. Like chase them literally like all the way down or whatever. They like thought they had broken down the robot, but the one girl with like lightning powers makes it work again or whatever. Start chasing them down with that again. It was really cool and really crazy. And they break the robot or whatever. The two sisters are like about to die, and the Seto Kaicho is like, you know what? Hey, you can still live. Just come on. I know life can be rough or something like that, and you're afraid to die, but you have to give people a chance or something like that. And she saves them too, and they all like get out and get rescued, and like half of the like JDSF team that got left there gets rescued too, and it's just like a sort of humanitarian ending, I guess, where everyone's happy. And then they go back out into the wasteland, like literally right 2 seconds later, like, all right, you did your job, now get back out there and go save more people.
Wait, isn't there more radiation there now?
Yeah.
From the bomb?
Yeah.
Field trip!
And it's deadly enough now to kill Capellians, isn't it?
Well, he was also injured too, because the kid had been shot like a bunch as well. Trying to protect
and he was lifting a beam, so that really takes him out of you.
Like, try to give it a nice little summary. To be honest, I think it's better if, like, to watch it and stuff like that. But I really would recommend this to other people. I thought it was a really nice show. It was really good to watch, and every moment of it was like pretty good, with like the cliffhangers and like, oh, what's happening and stuff like that. I mean, if you don't, try to think too hard, which everyone's like, I'm a critic, I'm gonna complain about something small or some stupid detail, then it's a nice show. And you know what, I'm gonna drop an AFAA rating on it. It's not really an AFAA rating, it's gonna be my AFAA rating, and I will give this show a 9, because I really did enjoy watching this show.
Whoa.
Like, everything about it was really nice. The people who made it are like the people who make, like, what is it, Go Hands, the people who make like Handshakers and K and all that other stuff, which is really funny. But so they got like that weird like rainbow colored like sort of backdrop going around like everything around the thing, and then they're like, oh, that's kind of pretty looking or whatever, but the art's not super pretty, I guess, in my opinion. But I'm not trying to be a critic here. I'm just saying it how it is. But it was a fun show. I recommend it to everyone out there. Go watch it. And that is my summer book story. Sensei,
best
what is
girl, Richard?
Best girl is Seto Kaicho, because she's like strong girl with cool girl and stuff.
That checks out.
But she's definitely, I think she's a good waifu. I think she can hit in the my list of top. I don't know. I'd put her somewhere between like the high top 20s of waifus.
Really?
Maybe, yeah.
That's really high.
Like, when I say top 20s, I mean like somewhere between like, I'd put her between 15 and 10 somewhere.
Wow.
Maybe higher.
That's
I
not the
don't know.
20s, that's the 15s.
I thought
or
about
10s, depending.
I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? No, she deserves higher. It was a really fun show.
Whoa.
Well, thank you for that thorough description of it. Michael, I guess it's your turn to talk about Armed Girls Machiavellianism.
Yes, forgive me if I'm a little bit less thorough. So, just some basic getting into it stuff. This show is made by Silverlink, which already tells you it's going to be probably pretty good. And it is pretty good. The voice actors, nothing special about them except that the main character is also the voice of the main dude in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. So, I didn't know that until when I looked stuff up right before, but now I'm like, that's pretty cool. So, this show centers around a school. And it used to be an all-girls school. But then sometime in the past, they're like, we're going to open it up to boys. And the girls were like, this is very scary. We need to be able to defend ourselves against these scary men. So they allow the girls to carry weapons, which is why it's armed girls. Most of the girls carry, like, telescoping metal sticks to whack people with. But some of them get actual swords. They're not practice swords or anything. They're sharp and they can kill you. But because of the nature of the show, people really don't die. Even though they make it seem sometimes like they will. And so that's kind of the order of the day, is that in this school, the girls have weapons and they're on top. And the boys they don't get to carry weapons, they get beat up. And the girls basically, they're like, okay, you have to dress as girl, you have to address us formally, you have to, like, you don't get any rights or privileges, we just control everything here. And because it was so strict, because of these girls, it became the go-to school to send delinquents to, because it's like, it doesn't matter how many fights you start, if you come here you're going to get whipped into shape, because everyone except you has a weapon. But our MC, that doesn't work on him, because his main goal in life is to punch women. He doesn't say that explicitly, but from the show and the OP and everything that we see him do, he punches women a lot and seems to enjoy it. He doesn't need a weapon, he has gloves with studs in them, and he punches them. And his main punch is like, it's almost like the Bruce Lee 1-inch punch, but it's more like, if he gets his palm on you, then he does this thing where he, like, cocks up his leg and, like, shoots through his muscles, and then you get exploded backwards with, like, the force of a gun. They call it, like, his gun move, or his magic bullet, they call it. He doesn't really punch so much as it's force that gets pushed out when he's already, like, has got his hand on you. And because of this, he doesn't need a sword, and so when he goes to the school and everyone's like, you need to follow the rules, he says, no, I will just punch whoever tries to stop me. And it works pretty well. And so the main, I guess, sort of conflict of this show is that he wants to get a permission slip signed that will allow him to go to, I guess, this school's version of Hogsmeade, where, like, you can leave during school hours to, like, shop and hang out. I don't know, because the show ends before he ever really does that.
Oh no!
Yeah, so the manga started in 2014 and is still ongoing. The show is in 2017. But by the end, he does get his permission slip signed, but we never really get to see him make use of it. So he's got to get the signatures of the 5 Supreme Swords, who are the girls that are at the very top of the pack, and they all have different abilities. Some of them have samurai swords, some of them have Western swords, and my favorite, her name is Warabi, and her sword is that she has a pet bear that will maul you. She's basically a circus master, and I think that's really cool.
They still count it as a sword, though?
I guess, yeah. I mean, she has, like, a whip thing, too, but her main method of fighting is having animals, specifically a bear that knows karate. And so, you know, he makes some trouble. This, one of the 5 swords, who's named Onigawara, and she wears an Oni mask, because as we learn later in her sad anime backstory, her mom thought she was ugly. And he fights her, he breaks off half of her mask and makes her embarrassed, and defeats her and has her, like, pinned to the ground. And then another girl who's, like, she's not one of the 5 swords, she's, like, one of their understudies. She whacks him in the back of the head with her stick, and that causes them to inadvertently kiss. So from now on, the Oni girl has a crush on him, and so do all the rest of the girls after he beats them. That's sort of his thing, is he punches them, beats them up, and then they love him.
Do not try that in real life, listeners. Do not try it. It won't work.
And so, you know, he wins her to his side and he gets her signature. And that's sort of the structure of the show is the next girl shows up and then he has to get in a fight with her and find a way to counter whatever her ability is, land the magic bullet, and then eventually get her signature. Although by episode 3, he realizes that someone from his old school is actually there. Her name is Amo, and they call her the Empress, and she's very powerful. Although at the old school, he thought she was a boy, so he's like, is this the same person? No, obviously, no one else can be that scary. And we get a flashback of the results of one of the fights between these two, and he's all cut up. But Amo didn't use a sword. She cut her up with her hands, because that's her ability. As we learn later, she can harden her skin to be as strong as steel, so she just like karate chops you and you split open.
Wait, so is it like a superpower, or is this like, oh yeah, it's a martial arts technique that makes me harden my skin?
Like, in real life, it would absolutely be considered a superpower, but within the context of the show, they make it, everything is martial arts.
It's not supposed to be supernatural.
No, even though all the, like, the feats are way beyond what you could do just by training in real life.
Right.
Yeah. They do that thing where they're like, yeah, he learned martial arts, so obviously he can jump 3 stories. So he wins the Oni girl over. The next one shows up. She's never all that important. Her name is Kikakujo Mary, and basically he beats her, and she's like, oh no, are you gonna force yourself on me? Wink wink. And he says, I would have, but now that you've decided to try to force me to, I refuse to grope you. Give me your stamp. And he gets her stamp. And so these two girls kind of become the main ones, and they supervise his behavior, or at least that's what they that's their excuse, is we're going to follow you around, definitely not flirt with you, we're just going to make sure you don't get up to any trouble. And so, going into the next sort of section here, Warabi, the cool one who has a pet bear, she's back from her trip to Hawaii, and she laughs like, hyo, 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 which is cool. And she's like, okay, I'm going to beat you into shape, mister. She steals one of his friends, who's a guy who, he just kind of is there. He's annoying and ugly, but it's his, like, one male friend, so he's, I guess, important. She steals him and crucifies him out in the school grounds, and she's like, you have to beat my tournament in order to save him. And the tournament, because my name is Warabi, is called the Warabimpics. First round is sumo wrestling. So he gets in his sumo suit. He gets his 2 girls into their sumo suits because it's like, I guess he has backups or whatever. But he's not fighting a person. He has to sumo against the bear. And he beats the bear by a technicality. But after he does so, the bear becomes in love with him as well. So in a couple later episodes, the bear will show up and it's always like blushy when it's around him. He beats the Warabimpics. He beats Warabi. Warabi, I don't know, she kind of likes him, but it seems more of a friendship thing, that, like, she's always his go-to for, like, I need a bro who's not a man. Which gets us into my favorite arc. And basically, one of the other 5 swords, her name is Satori, and she has big, wide eyes that never ever blink, and she's, like, creepy, and she's a human, but she doesn't act like one. She's just like if an alien came to Earth and didn't understand how humans acted, is how she acts. But she sees that he's corrupted 2 members of what's essentially this school's student council, the 5 swords. And she's like, I need to not only stop him, but I need to beat them into shape. And I must do this by destroying their relationship. So she roofies the main character and gets her assistants to come in with a camera. She strips herself, gets some pictures of the 2 of them together, and distributes them to the 2 other girls to make them hate him. And so he's obviously distraught by this, but he looks at this picture and he realizes, and he's talking to Warabi about this because she will actually hear him out, and he realizes the picture that has been distributed here is censored. There's a blur of light over where his wiener would be. And he says, I don't remember much of that encounter, having been roofied, but I do remember I was not erect. So what I have to do to prove myself, to prove my loyalty to these 2 girls, is I have to track down the SD card with the original of this picture to show them that I was flaccid. And then they will know. So that's his reason for fighting Satori. And he catches her in the bath, and he beats her by whipping out his wiener. And basically, the reason she's so good at fighting is you can't tell where she's looking, because her eyes never blink and they just sort of stare forward. But by forcing her to be embarrassed and look away from his wiener, he's able to beat her. But she destroys the SD card, but she's his friend now anyway, so she explains everything. And that whole plot line is resolved. He's collected 4 of them by this point. He needs the 5th one. And the 5th one is a blind girl with a rabbit motif who has very good ears. She can hear everything well enough that she doesn't need to see. And she's very fast and strong. But really deep down, she wants friends. So she never really hates him that much. She more hates that he didn't listen when she was trying to discipline him, because really she just wants someone to work for her and be nice. There's a bunch of shenanigans, but what it leads up to is Ame or whoever, Amo, the scary girl from his old school. And she wants to fight him. She wants to kill him because he didn't like her as much as she thought earlier. At the old school, he was like, yeah, let's be friends. And then he saw how much of an asshole she was, and so he didn't want to be friends. And this made her extremely mad. And so they fight, and he puts a manga in his shirt to block her one-shot kill attack. She has... The other thing that she's done, in addition to being able to harden her body as hard as steel, is she's learned an auto-counter technique by, I guess, practicing martial arts while getting whipped. So she associates pain with good moves. So whenever someone attacks her, her body, faster than you can think, and faster, it's like a spinal nerve response. She has an auto move where it'll just attack you back, too fast for you to react to it, and too fast for her own mind to understand it. It just happens. So he has to deal with that. But he eventually wins, you know. They punch each other a lot. He throws off his defenses, and they have a lot of fun fighting. And, you know, he wins because he has more resolve, because he's not trying to win. He's trying to show that I don't like you very much. And in the process, she ends up being more okay with him. And he gets, by this point, the bunny girl is like, I'll give you my final stamp if you work for me. And the headmistress is like, you're going to get expelled unless everyone keeps him on a tight leash. So now there's a reason for all the girls to follow him. And then there's an episode 13 episode where they go to the hot springs and have some shenanigans there. And basically it's all sort of wrapped up with a little bow. You can tell the story's not over, really, but everyone's sort of okay with him. They're all happy. And he finally is able to go to Hogsmeade Village and not have to... You know, everyone who has power in the school likes him now, so he can pretty much do whatever.
So, before he had this thing signed, did he live at school? Are there, like, dorms? Is he not allowed to leave at all?
There's dorms, yeah. Yeah, so I guess it's a boarding school. So that's why the ability to leave the campus is extremely important to him. And all the other guys, they just accept their lot in life, but he's like, no, I'm gonna punch people. So yeah, it was pretty fun. The overarching plot line is pretty simple. It's more like a bunch of little individual mini arcs dealing with each girl as he overcomes and then wins them over. So there's not like a whole lot to... I pretty much explained all of it. There was a couple mini arcs that I glossed over, but that's really all there is to it. It's a very simple, clean show. Pretty fun. I'd give it an AFAA 7 or 8 probably if I was to rate it, which I guess I am. You know, it was fun. The ED is a really good song. I enjoyed that quite a bit. It was a cool show. Nothing spectacular, but definitely pretty good.
Who's best girl? Oh, you already said the bear one.
Yeah. She's just fun.
That's pretty cool, man. So I I chose the Future Diary. And I was not planning on going into as much detail with the story as these two did. So, especially because this is a 26 episode show, I will not be going through every arc and every scene. But this might be, it's probably the most well-known show of the ones that we got randomly assigned. Maybe Blood Blockade Battlefront is a little more relevant today, but I think Future Diaries still has, like, a longer legacy and, like, more overall, like, I guess, notoriety. But I had never seen it. It's based on a manga, ran 2006, 2008. Wikipedia said there was a spin-off manga, too, that went all the way to, from 2008 to 2013. but it didn't look like anything like super major. I didn't read it. I didn't take the extra time to read this manga. I don't know what it's about, but I don't think the anime covers it, because the anime only went from 2011 to 2012, so no idea what the spinoff is. It's 26 episode show, 2 core, so it was like end of 2011, beginning of 2012. So it was an interesting time for anime. A lot of very iconic stuff was coming out around that time. And I think it's around the time that people in America really started to get the anime boom, and its popularity really started to rise over here in the States and just in the West in general. And Michael, you're right. He should have called it a journal. 'Cause this little boy Yuto, kind of a little bitch boy. He gets bullied, and it's just because he doesn't say or do anything at school. This guy Yuto, he's just writes everything he sees happen in his diary on his flip phone, which typing on a flip phone is pretty hard. So I guess props to him for that.
They allow phones in school in this universe?
I guess so, because he just always has it out right in his diary. And all the kids are like, "Look at this little boy, look at write his phone, what a loser." And there is one guy who kind of bullies him, and it comes over sometimes and is like, "Hey, you little dummy, huh?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And the guy's like so put off by like the fact that he's not fighting back or getting mad. He's like, "Oh, okay, Yudo, bye." So he's really got nothing going on. But then suddenly one day his what he thinks is an imaginary friend, but apparently is actually the god of space and time, which don't know how you make that mistake. But well, I thought I imagined talking to God every now and then. But he starts a battle royale. If any of you are familiar with Fortnite, it's very similar to that. Where everyone, or not everyone, 12 people's phones, or however they record their diary, start getting entries of the future. And that's why the show is called Future Diary. If you couldn't figure that one out. And he soon learns also, and this is why this show is so famous, that he is a stalker. A yandere named Yuno, who also has a future diary that's all about everything Yuto does. So, and this is what the show's most known for, is Yuno and her being like, I think she's the most iconic yandere in anime. I can't think of anyone that's more iconic than Yuno.
Yeah, she's the poster child. Doesn't she make the meme face that everyone copied a few years ago?
That one face she makes, I think it's in episode 1, it's like super early on, is like a big meme. People will copy it with other yandere characters, or characters that even do like a yandere thing. They're like, time to draw them in the Yuno face. But I gotta be real with you guys. Yuno, not the biggest yandere in the world. Like, she is one, no doubt. But like, maybe just standards have changed. Maybe, I don't know. Like, she does kill a lot of people. But when I think of yandere 2, I think the person that the target of their yandere-ness is also in danger. But I never really got that feeling with her and Yuto.
So is she more like the protective yandere, where it's like, I'm not going to hurt you, but I'll hurt anyone near you that like attacks?
Yes, but she doesn't even do that all that much. Like, honestly, when there's people near him that are like, oh, a girl that he might be interested in, or she might be interested in him, like, she does, like, kind of like, you don't stay away from that girl. But I can't think of an instance where she killed someone because they were getting too close to Yuto. Except for the times that they were genuinely trying to kill Yuto. She tried once, but then she ended up being right that person did want to kill Yuto. At the time, it didn't seem like it, but she was right about it in the end. So, or when I think of yanderes, I think of them like, well, as much as I hate to say it, Yandere Simulator by Yandere Dev is what I think, where it's like, I will hunt and kill this person who is talking to my beloved senpai, because how dare they? He's mine. And she does that some, but It's more like, I'm just gonna protect Yuto and finish this game for him so that he can win, and we can be together. Because she just loves him so much. There is one time where she drugs him and sort of tries to keep him in like a half comatose state in like a warehouse so that no one could ever find and hurt him from the war, and be like, oh yeah, you'll never find us here, we could be here together forever and hide from future diary. But well, then she know you can never hide from the future diary. It's a pretty cool show though, extremely edgy. And I knew this going in that it was going to be edgy. I know Richard said it was going to be edgy, and he said he liked the show, so which is, red flag for edginess. But oh my god, this show is so edgy. It's so incredibly edgy. There are multiple separate characters with rape backstories. Usually one is the limit for an anime.
Really dropping the ball on that one.
What do you mean?
That was a stupid pun. Just
Oh, I get it. Michael doesn't get it. He hasn't seen Future Diary.
Oh, I thought you made a reference to balls dropping. That's why I
that
laughed.
too.
One day that'll happen to Yuto, but not in this anime. Wait, no.
Yeah.
It does happen in this anime.
Oh.
Here's the thing about Yuto, right? He's such a cuck boy, but I feel like if he was even like a little bit more Chad, he could totally control Yuno, because she loves him so much and will really do anything for him, that if he could just like think about it for a second and like really try to like psychologically like influence her, he absolutely could. Like he could absolutely have her right under his thumb if he was just a little more Chad. But he's so, I don't know. He's just, I don't know what to do.
Well, and he's in a battle
scared.
royale, right? So the strongest weapon in one of those is having a reliable ally.
I know. And, like, he does have that, because she is like, oh, I'll protect you no matter what, I love you, Yuto. But he could, like, I don't know. Because, like, there's a lot of times where she doesn't listen to him. And that's, like, a big conflict, especially early on in the show. She just will not listen to him. He'll be like, please don't kill that person. They're my friend. And she'll be like, no, Yuto, they're dangerous. And, I mean, usually she is right. But, like, I just feel like he could have controlled her better if he was better at talking to people, I guess. But I guess then he wouldn't have a diary that talks about everything around him and not himself, that he writes constantly without talking to anyone.
So I have a question about how the future stuff works.
Of course.
So, like, you said, what's her name? The yandere, or near yandere. She has a diary that says Yuta's future, right?
Yes, because she wrote a diary all about him and everything he does. So when hers became a future diary, the future things that were added were things that happen to him and things he does.
So if she gets a diary thing and it's like, he's gonna have pizza for lunch, and she tells him this, can he decide to eat something that's not pizza, or is he locked into the future prediction?
No. It's a big thing where, because you can see the future, you can actually change it. And
Okay.
it actually takes sort of causality out of the hands of the god of space and time. He's like, shh, you guys got it now. Because they can see their future and decide to change it. Because when they're going to die in the future, like when the actions currently taking place would lead to their death, they get a thing in their future diary that just says dead end. And they're like, shit. And it's a big thing that Yuto keeps getting these dead ends and keeps changing the future to avoid them, even though that's meant to be something that's extremely hard to do, because it's like, it's in causality that you'll die, so you'll have to really change it to not die. And he sort of becomes a famous part of this battle, this war, I guess, because of this. Like, oh my god, he's dodged like 3 dead ends.
And all the other people who are in this battle royale and they see that they're gonna die, they just don't manage to escape that?
Some of them don't. I think some of them do. It's hard to remember the earlier fights in the show for me. So I sort of watched it. I had a few different binge sessions throughout the month of this show. I'm gonna go ahead and spoil. Most of this month for me was spent watching Yatamon. So the earlier stuff is a little bit harder for me to remember. But yeah, I think a lot of times. Well, also. Only one person's supposed to survive this, so even if you dodge a dead end temporarily, a lot of people end up getting them anyway. But yeah, it's something you definitely can do, and everyone's diary works a little bit different, so they all have sort of different strategies of using it to survive and escape danger. There is one sort of famous thing. I didn't know about this, actually. It's a smaller famous thing about this show that I wanted to talk about, in that there is a openly gay homunculus. I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler that he's... it doesn't really make sense until you watch the show what I mean by homunculus. But he ain't a normal dude. He's a real freak. Not because he's gay. Separate reason.
Now, when you say he's homunculus, do you mean it in the sort of anime artificial human sense, or do you mean it in the old-timey medieval sense where it's like a miniature person?
Oh, no, I mean it in the anime way.
Okay.
Where he's not a normally born man. I guess I should have spoiler warned that, but it's not a huge... part. Honestly, this character isn't even a huge part of the show until way late, and even then it's I guess he did something. But he is he kisses Yuta, and it's not consensual on Yuta's part, but apparently that was a big deal because this came out in 2012. This part the kiss would have been in 2012 because it's the second half of the show, and even Obama was only barely approving of gay marriage at that point. Barack Obama, famously liberal president of the United States, even then he was I don't know about gay marriage. But it was in there. And I guess it was in the manga even earlier, probably. 2006, 2008. I'm assuming... I never finished the manga when I read it a long time ago. I only got halfway through what was in the anime in the manga. So I'm assuming this gay kiss was in the manga too, but I don't know. So apparently this was a big deal, especially for fans of that sort of stuff on websites like Tumblr, as you could imagine. But it was pretty interesting to see in a show this old. Nowadays, you've got Yuri on Ice and Banana Fish, where butt sex is the reg for anime. But it was a different time, so it was interesting to see that. Now, another sort of interesting character in this that I wanted to bring up was Eighth. For those of you who don't know, the characters, to sort of hide their anonymity, they have they're numbered first, second, third. And somehow they all know each other's numbers, and that's what they go by a lot of times. So Eighth, I don't remember her real Japanese name, but she... everyone in this show... Richard, do you remember this charter?
Yeah, this is the one... About. Is this the one with where the guys...
She owns an orphanage for kids.
Yeah, okay.
And her diary is she can actually... change other people's diaries into future diaries, with hers being a server that hosts them all, which is pretty cool. So she has all her kids become future diary people and do stuff for her. But she is the weirdest looking character in the whole show. She's the proportion and size of Doraemon. Her head is the size of some people in the show.
And she's supposed to be a normal person?
Yes, and it's extremely goofy in this edgy, dark-ass show. And honestly, it kind of betrays the dark themes of the show to have her walking around in it and be I'm so sad these people are dead. But, just looking at her next to the other characters is she doesn't fit. It doesn't fit at all. I don't know what the guy was thinking when he put her in. It's so stupid. I just wanted to address that. It's very dumb, and it kind of takes away from the show, in my opinion. That's my first gripe. I don't have a lot of gripes. It's pretty good story, though, honestly. I do like sort of the way it goes. I like these kinds of shows where it's like, everyone but one person is gonna die, but the question is when and how. It's it's pretty cool, a lot like Fortnite. Now I did want to talk a little bit about the ending, but Michael, I know you haven't seen this. If you care, this is the spoiler warning. If you want to deafen yourself, we can at you in Discord when the spoilers are over.
Yeah, I guess I'll do that.
Okay. This is a pretty good show. It's a pretty popular one. I feel like a lot of people would be interested in seeing it in the future. So I do want to give this warning before I get into the deep... I know I already said homunculus. I feel bad about that. Is he deafened? I can't see.
Yeah, he's deafened.
Okay. So, Richard, and those of you who's still here, if you don't want to hear it, just hop ahead 5 minutes or something. So there's been 3, I guess, Future Diary universes in the anime, right?
Yes.
There's the first one that Yuno's from, and she's like, what the hell? Can't bring people back to life? That's bullshit. But I guess you kind of can by going back in time. And there's the second one where Yuto goes on a murder spree and kills all those younglings. Oh, that was so funny when he was just shooting the orphans with that straight face, sorry, I'll bring them all back and give them a good life. But he can't. So very funny. Decapitated that child.
Decapitated a lot of people.
Yeah, and she's killed multiple children too. Because there's that other, I think fourth. No, that wasn't fourth. I don't remember the number of the child, but the puppet kid.
The puppet kid.
Puppet kid. But when they go to the third world and have the fight there, this very tiny change somehow set into motion a series of events, just reactions, that made it so every single participant in the Future Diaries sad backstory doesn't happen, and everything just works out for all of them. Well, except for the girl who was raped 5 years ago, but she has already dealt with that trauma herself, and they're just a couple now that isn't killing people. But everything just works itself out. And I thought that was wild.
It's the right way to make make it happy for everyone.
I wasn't expecting the moral of the story at the end to just be it should have just been nicer to her parents. Not put him in the parent cage. That's really what it came down to. It's just be nice to your parents, because you never know what could happen. Also, Yuto's dad's a real jerk, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, should we... I think that's everything I wanted to say about the end. I thought it was cool that the thing at the end of the after credits thing of the last episode, where somehow showed up in the time dimension and helps Yuto create a new tree of causality, which is pretty cool. And I wonder if that's inspired by the girl who chants love at the edge of the world, the tree of causality thing. Because I'm pretty sure that was a big thing in that. But it doesn't make a lot of sense that shows up there. They never explain it. I kind of didn't like that. But everything else, I thought the ending was pretty good.
There is an OVA. I don't know if you saw that alongside. There's OVA called Future Diary Redial. I'll be honest, it's not... I don't think it's super, super important, but it does have some things in it that are... But there's a few things in it.
I had no idea.
It's it's sort of like a direct sequel to
what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you.
I'm supposed to have become a Future Diary expert this month. I didn't even know there was an OVA. I didn't watch it. Well, shit. Oops. I'll have
But
to watch it later.
But you followed the instructions. We were supposed to watch a show that we found on
You're
the
right.
mouth.
It didn't have the OVA's OP on there.
The OVA does
Alright.
have a different opening, like a completely different
there
opening.
you go. Let's bring Michael back in, because I'm done talking about the spoilers. I have a little... I'm just gonna add him.
Hello, kids.
Hello.
Hey, Michael. Spoiler time's over. I will say, I think the first OP and ED are extremely good. I didn't like the second OP or ED nearly as much. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if there's any like little things I forgot to talk about. It seemed like for some characters, maybe just the story as a whole, the author didn't have a plan for where he wanted those characters or that story to, like, or even the story to go when he started the show. There's some characters like the bully and like Ninth, the one with the bombs, that are just 100% different at the beginning of the show than where they end up for most of the show. So I don't know what the deal is with that. If he intended that and it just like kind of wasn't great character writing, or if he like kind of changed his mind about them and just some of the pieces of what was before didn't fit very well. But I just kind of got that vibe for a lot of the characters in the show, and well, maybe not a lot, but a fair amount. Like, the dog lady and her friend, sort of like villains, and they're like, oh, let's be friends. And like, okay, we're actually best friends now immediately. But yeah, overall very good show. I would probably give it a 9, but I really like these sorts of battle royale edge fests anime, so if you don't like them, you probably won't like it as much. But I mean, I think there's a reason the show is very popular for a long time, and still pretty much is. It's a pretty good show. And best girl is probably that dark-skinned dog girl who had the breeder diary from her papa dog. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I want to say about Future Diary, which I guess means it's time for Richard to talk about Spider Riders.
Oh boy.
Oh, no.
So, Spider Riders is a show that Michael would absolutely hate and would never want to watch ever, because there are spiders on there. Lots of spiders. In fact, like, everything that's about Spider Riders or spiders is like, I guess, like the whole civilization. There's like a whole civilization that's based off of these Spider Riders. But here's where we get the
worst thing I've ever heard, Richard.
like, their city's called like Arachnovia or something. So it's really interesting. But here's the fun part. So as we did with the our roles on the fun anime music quiz, we followed the shows, I guess, from where we started. And I did that to the exact point. So this thing of Spider Riders was the second season of Spider Riders. And that's exactly where I started and exactly what I watched. So the
Did
beginning
you feel
of,
lost?
I was extremely lost. Because it starts with them like in the middle of a war in some sort of underground civilization, and I was like, I have no idea what's happening. Also, I did some information or research on this, and this show ran on WB Kids in like 2006 or whatever. So that was interesting. Also, it was almost, I don't know, I'm gonna call it almost impossible, but I will say it's impossible to find a Japanese version of this. So I ended up watching the WB Kids dub version of the entire show. And oh boy, was it a treat, because they had like a different opening in every or like the beginning of the episode, where it's like some sort of like yeah Spider Riders rap going on, and I was like, oh, this is definitely meant for kids. It was this show is done by a studio called B Train. They don't really do anything anymore. they're just kind of there. I think the last thing they made was like in 2012, so they have a while before they really created anything. I guess going through the show. So basically, Spider Riders is about a kid whose name is Hunter Steele, which is
That's amazing.
It's a baller name. Who has this ability to ride and like fight a spider, or like ride on a spider and like fight along with it, I guess, in a sense. And these this is like a thing that happened in this ancient society where I guess he's at. And this is me basing it off of from everything that I understand from watching the second season. And what Hunter needs to do is Hunter needs to find these these special like pieces things. Like there's like this fancy little oracle thing that's like, Hunter, you must go and find these pieces and save the society, because the spiders are under attack from like a civilization of like grasshopper people or something of that nature. And they're like, we have to get rid of them. And Michael, I'm sure you'd be 100% on the side of the grasshopper people, because they want to like commit genocide. Here's the thing, like the society is like people, or like human people or whatever, but they embed their culture with like spider stuff. So like spiders are like norm for them, and they're like, spiders are our worship things. Anyway, but this kid needs to find these things called like the oracle keys, and they're hidden in all sorts of different places or whatever. Like one's actually just right there on him the whole time of the show, and I think they like did that in the last season, because he's like, oh, I got this thing right here with me the whole time. He's always looking at it. There's like there's like a bunch of people in the group. I forget to mention that. I should have probably mentioned that first. There's like a group of characters, just like in any other show. And Hunter is not alone. Hunter is not alone. And one of the people who Hunter's hanging out with is named Corona. And I was just like, that's really good. So every time they're like, Corona's getting too close to me. And I'm like, I'm sure Corona's getting too close to you. And that's just that really made it like really good, was the fact that her name was Corona. And the only thing I could think of was, you're going to get sick, kid. You're going to die. Basically, this show is Hunter and Corona, and to be honest, I don't remember the other people's names, and I did not write them down, because they definitely were not as important as Hunter and Corona throughout the entire series. The only other person that I can think of is the first Spider King. That's just because his name is the first Spider King, who is like the original Spider Rider and defeated the like grasshopper people from like years ago or whatever to, prevent them from taking over Arachnobia or whatever the name of the city.
Richard, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
You said the spider people are just normal people, but they worship the spider and like fit it into their like a culture and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Are the grasshopper people the same way, or are they literal grasshopper people?
They are literal grasshopper people. They have 2 arms and legs and like bug mouths and heads.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
They're pretty weird and wild. Now, Michael, which side would you go with? Would you still side with humanity, or would you side with the grasshopper heads?
That's a really interesting question, because the one sounds like the people are disgusting bug freaks, and the other one, they're people who like disgusting bug freaks. So I think the ideal situation is that both sides wipe each other out in a massive war, and maybe some like orphaned kids from this. Okay, so the orphaned kids from the spider village survive. They start a society that has nothing to do with spiders. Then they get wiped out, and their kids rebuild, and it has a society that has even less to do with spiders. Then they have kids, and they get wiped out, and do that a few more times to cleanse the spider out of them, and then the humans are okay to win.
Well, none of that occurs in this series, because they continue to love the spider. In fact, the spider is what saves the day from people getting like killed. Because like the spider that's like his main spider or whatever for the kid, his name is Shadow, like the hedgehog, and
Ooh.
he talks and stuff, and he's kind of weird. He's like the spiders in the show that they ride on are not like actual like spiders. They kind of look like robot spiders, but they still do like spider things like shoot webs and all sorts of other weird stuff that spiders do. But
I'd be a little disappointed if they didn't shoot webs.
Would Peter Parker fit in this society?
Peter Parker would be a god in the society. He's shooting webs and be like, "Oh, he is the real spider. Copulate with me, Peter."
So it's a society of MCU fangirls.
Yeah, that's right. But a lot of the show reminded me of like basically like Transformers, because there'd be like there's this one bad guy. His name is Stags. He's just like one of the grasshopper people. He's like the main antagonist for like the entire show. He's like an actual like stag beetle. So that's fun to know. And then the other guy, there's like his underling who's like what's his name? Starscream or whatever. And he's like his name is like Hot Grasshopper or Grasshop. That Grasshop is his name. And he's like he's just like I guess sort of like the evil comedic relief, and he's like, we can't let them do this, but my lord, and he's like, he gets banished a lot and yelled at a lot and all this stuff. But 90% of the show is you learning about that you can come through with the power of believing in yourself and working together, and that no matter what kind of bugs that may show up, like moths, and there's lots of bugs in this show. So that was kind of nice to see all the different weird gigantic insects or whatever. But the power of believing yourself, the power of doing things, and becoming a true spider rider is what I learned from this show.
Richard, do you think you have what it takes to become a true spider rider?
No, because I actually did watch the first episode of the first season, and well, it turns out that Steel got his like Hunter, I still love that. Got his spider rider from his like grandfather who had it like in his basement. So unless there's a spider in my basement that I can ride, I don't think so.
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of spiders in your basement. It's the riding that might be difficult.
Well, if there's enough of them, I'm sure I can. But overall, Spider Riders was a fun kid show to watch. This will not receive an AFAA 8 or a 7 or a 6. This will receive a 5 because
holy shit!
One, it was super dumb to look for. This was like nowhere to be found. I went to a lot of places to try to find this thing, and I was like, no, I can't even find it. And then I had to watch this like 4Kids dub of it. So like sometimes things didn't make sense when they were saying something or whatever, and I'd be like, this is you trying to like localize it for the kids. And it's just like that's nice, but the original people would be very ashamed and be like, I don't get it.
Yeah, what about all the adults trying to watch Spider Riders like Richard?
I was thinking this show would have a little more stuff into it, but no, it's straight up kids show for kids. Go watch it if you got kids, or find one. Go.
Oh wait, Richard, who's best girl?
Oh my God, Corona's best girl, because Corona's
Nice.
like the only girl.
Well, all right, Michael, tell us about Late Night Genius Bangungo or whatever his name is.
Yeah, so like you guys, I had no idea anything about this show, but I knew even less than you guys did, because if you remember, during the anime music quiz section where we picked this, my video cut out a lot, so I didn't really get a good look to see what the show looked like. So that made episode 1 pretty interesting for me because I just I loaded up episode 1 and it's blurry. It's in 4:3. It looks like it was made in like the 70s, and they're talking about old ass Japanese shit. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want to watch 12 episodes of this. And then all of a sudden, the weirdly drawn character pulls out what is undeniably a smartphone. And I'm like, what? Did this show predict the smartphone? And then he calls someone who lives in a different, more modern animation style. And at this point, I have to pause the episode and realize this show came out in 2018. They were just pranking me.
That show was in 2018?
Yes. So apparently, the original manga that started all this came out in 1967 and ran until 1992. There was a bunch of anime adaptations in the 70s through the 80s. The last one ended in 2000. And then, after 18 years of no anime and 10 years of the author being dead, they're like, let's just make a new one. So, the start of episode 1 is them being, like, left off from how it was in the old-ass one. And so, the joke is that they have, in this first episode, is that they have to modernize the show. So, the old dude and his old dude-looking son literally they go to the size of the screen and they push it so that it goes from being 4:3 into 16:9. Which was probably one of the greatest jokes I've ever seen. I think I couldn't probably recommend this show as a whole, but I would absolutely recommend episode 1. Episode 1 is amazing. So, like, we need to modernize. We need to find a new voice actor for Papa, who's the main character. And so they get a cameo from Jun Fukuyama, who's known for playing Lelouch, Persona Joker, and Koro Sensei. Very famous guy. He isn't credited on Mal, but they talk about him in the episode, and it's very obviously him. So he's the main voice for Papa for a little bit. And so they modernize the city, they clean up the art style, they make it more HD. They get, it ends up being sort of this sort of shiny flat look with purple outlines, a very modern thing. They put a Hooters in their town. They get stopped by some dude on the street, street sweeper, and they're like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And Papa says, it's 2018. You're not allowed to question these things. And then they start blurring out random passerby to respect them and stuff. And then it goes into the ED, which has nice watercolors and modern music. So there's a total of like 7 or 8 characters in the show. You've got Papa. He's the main character. I think back in the 70s or even earlier when he was a child within the context of the show, he was a genius. But one day he sneezed and a gear came out of his nose and now he's a dumbass. You have Bakaban, his son, who, I don't know, he's just a kid. He doesn't do anything. You've got Mama. You've got Hajime, the little, like, the baby kid who's actually a smart genius, but they treat him like a child. There's the street sweeper, whose name I eventually learned was Ray no Ray, and he just says that a lot, and he sweeps the streets, and he never does anything. And all of these people have, like, very minor voice actors. Then we get to Eel Dog, and he is part eel, part dog, or like an eel shaped like a dog or something. And
What?
He has big lips, and he talks, and he is the most famous voice actor out of all of them. He's Griffith from Berserk. He's Suzaku from Code Geass. He's Cloud Strife in the Final Fantasy anime. But he's this minor joke character who, he shows up in a lot of episodes, but like the joke is that he's an eel dog. And then the final character is a policeman who is he's like a pervy policeman who doesn't actually solve any crimes, and he likes to shoot his gun into the air. And they make jokes about how that's not appropriate anymore.
Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but this show sounds extremely funny.
Episode 1 is extremely funny, but unfortunately, it's a bunch of gags, a lot of which are embedded into Japanese culture, and it is very much aimed towards, like, it aired late night, so it's aimed at, like, 40-year-old Japanese salarymen who want to kind of laugh at, like, society before they go to bed. So a lot of the stuff is, like, making fun of the TV network that aired it, or, like, indirectly being like, Concole, isn't that funny? Why don't we make Laws of Physics into anime girls? So, like, there's no overarching plot. It's very episodic. There's a few really good highlights though. Like at the end of episode 4, for instead of the normal ED, they take Hajime the child and they make him into a 3D motion capture character dancing on screen for like 5 minutes. But yeah, so there's a bunch of little gags and stuff in there. Some of them were hits, some of them were misses. I definitely wouldn't recommend trying to sort of binge it like I had to. In small doses, it's probably a lot better. There's jokes about wanting to be a YouTuber. There's a line in episode 11 that says, "More importantly, Bakaban, let's play human fidget spinner." I don't even remember what they were doing there. I don't know what human fidget spinner is.
Oh my god.
So yeah, like pick an episode, watch it. Definitely episode 1, I would say. I don't know if the whole show is worth watching, but there's definitely some real highlights in it. Then this is more a me thing. I get to episode 12, and I think that this has to be the greatest bait and switch of all of anime, because by this point I had given up on streaming because internet bad, so I had gotten the horrible subs version of it. I load up episode 12 and like, okay, this beginning before credit scene is Sweetness and Lightning. It must have just aired on the same network and they were like, we have the rights to it, let's do it. And I keep watching and it's still an episode of Sweetness and Lightning. And it turns out it's not in fact the greatest bait and switch in all of anime, just whatever the IRC thing for horrible subs messed up. And they gave me an episode of Sweetness and Lightning labeled as episode 12 of Bakaban. And I checked the file name and it says Bakaban.
Michael, did you watch the whole episode?
No, I got about a quarter of the way through and then I started clicking through and I was like, if Papa doesn't show up, there has to be something wrong. And there was something wrong. So
Did you ever watch the real episode 12?
I did. The real episode 12 is about the policeman character being like, I've been in the background, I want to show all about me. So he and Hello Kitty decide that they want to be the main characters. But the joke's on him because he ends up not being the policeman that solves the case. He ends up being the victim of the case. He gets killed and spends the rest of the episode being a ghost, watching who I can only assume is a famous voice actress. I didn't look her up. Or maybe like a famous Japanese TV personality. And she becomes the investigative cop to figure out who killed him. So he comes back to life by his ghost. He forces his way back into his body, but because his body was damaged, he's still dying because the wound that killed him isn't healed. So they get energy from all of the viewers in Japan to heal him, but instead of getting healed, he gets turned into a totally different, cool new character with a different design. And that's the end of the show. And I don't know if there'll ever be something else or not, but like, I don't know, it's just them being goofy. Some of the jokes work in America, for me. Some of them went totally over my head. But, so I guess I'd have to... Oh, I forgot to mention. The author who was behind this original, he was known as the Gag Manga King, and he also wrote Osamatsu-san, which I think is more famous. They've had crossover anime in the past, but I don't know if it would be worth watching the 1992 edition to see if it's funny. It's probably not. But yeah, definitely, it's got some good points, it's got high points, it's got low points. I would probably give it an AFAA 6, because the first episode, incredibly funny. There's some highlights throughout the rest of it, but then also, there was bits that it was just sort of a struggle to get through, because I couldn't relate to the frame of mind that these episodes are meant to be funny to.
Who's best girl?
The best girl is Bakaban no Mama, because I think she's the only female... She would be the only female character in the show if it wasn't for a one-off gag in one of the episodes where Papa, Ray no Ray, and the policeman decide to go hook up with some girls, and they end up disgusted with the boys, and the girls leave.
Well, alright. My show that I picked after that was Wakako Zake. It's now I didn't realize this at the time, because if you go back and watch the recording, I forgot to get the episode numbers and like other information for the last 2 shows on the list at first, and I went back and got them really quick during the recording. I forgot to check the lengths of those episodes, Wakakozake are 2-minute episodes. 12 episodes. So this was an extremely quick watch for me. Watched it all in one sitting about 2 days ago. So not a difficult one. I felt very comfortable leaving this one to the end. It's based on a manga that started in 2011, is actually still going. The anime came out in 2015. And it is a story about an alcoholic wine ant who has nothing better to do but to get plastered every day on the way back from work. Every single day. The theme song even says, because the theme song in the version I got had subs, and it's like, every day on my way back to work, I take a detour and get hammered. And it's it's not like she's like downing pints or anything, but she goes out drinking every single night by herself on the way back from work. So like, she's really got nothing going on. I think the biggest thing about this show, and I think what most people will take away, is that the art style for this woman is very wonky. Kind of like that woman I described from Future Diary. Where she just has a very large head, and her eyes are very weirdly shaped. And no one else in the show looks like this. Granted, no one else in the show has like much speaking lines or are real characters. They're just kind of like background people who are occasionally like, man, I sure do like clams. And she overhears this and she's like, oh, me too, to herself. She would never talk to another person. She keeps to herself the entire time. But the whole show, I guess, the whole point of it is that she goes to a new place each week, and she talks about a new food and alcohol combination and how good it is. And every week you're holding on, because at some point in every episode, she goes, "Pshoo!" because she's so satisfied with the food and alcohol she's eating and drinking. And that's like the highlight of each episode, is when she does Pshoo. You're like on the edge of your seat, like, when is she gonna do it? Why is she gonna do it? Like, is there gonna be a variation? Because sometimes there's Pshoo variations. And it's really like the best part of the whole show. And I want to do a little game with you guys. I have a list of everything she ate in the show, and I want you to guess which one of these gave her the largest and most satisfied Pshoo. Because there's one where she has a really long Pshoo, where she goes Pshoo, shoo, 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 and it's like the biggest Pshoo. And I want you guys to guess which food made her, I guess, nut the biggest, basically. So I'll read them out for the people listening. I just put them in the Discord for you guys. But it is fried salted salmon, deep fried chicken, goose liver and ponzu, sea urchin and watercress, grilled chicken, salted sake steamed clams, potato salad, Goya shampuru, kani miso, which just means crab soup. Don't know why they didn't translate that. Asparagus skewer, not sewer. Hoke, I don't remember what that is. And roasted ginkgo nuts.
I'm gonna put in my vote for potato salad.
Potato salad.
I love potato salad.
What about you, Richard? What do you think gave her the biggest Pshoo?
I'm gonna drop the nuts on this one.
Roasted ginkgo nuts?
Yeah.
That's a very good guess, but the nuts actually gave her a lot of very tiny Pshoos. Like, Pshoo. And that was an interesting variation. Don't remember what she did for the salad, Michael, but that was not the biggest Pshoo. The biggest Pshoo was, of course, the fucking asparagus. She gets this huge rod of asparagus that's like dipped in some like fried, I think, on the end. And it's huge, and she just takes a bite at it, and she gives out this huge Pshoo. She loves this asparagus, this fried asparagus skewer. Don't know why. It's a vegetable, so like, you know. But
I like a chewy one of that.
Yeah,
asparagus is hard to eat.
Yeah, and I mean it's fried, so like that can't make it. It might make it easier. I don't know. I've never had this. The thing is, a lot of these foods, it goes from like kind of normal stuff that's like pretty Japanesey. It's all Japanesey, but like some of it's kind of kind of Westerner stuff too. That's like just kind of added some Japanese flair, and some of it is just like disgusting stuff that like who would ever eat this? Like crab brain.
Ew.
And she's like, why is it that the most vital part for a crab to live is also the most delicious? She's like, you could eat it all in one bite, but it's more respectful to savor it. And she just takes little bits of the crab brain and eats it a little bit at a time, and gives her pashu, all while drinking alcohol. Like different kinds of sake and stuff. She's like, oh, this one goes good with a keg of beer. Like this one goes good with this sake from down south or something like that. And it really is kind of like, it's framed like it's I guess educational is the word, but it's like a tourism type thing, but not for any one specific place. It's for going out and getting drunk, or not drunk, but just like drinking and eating out at bars. So I think this might actually be a ploy by the Japanese government to try to increase birth rates in their country. They're like, oh, all of these NEETs staying home. What if the anime girl told them, go outside and get food and beer? So, you know, there's so much media where it's like, oh, thanks Shinzo Abe for telling us to go outside. I think this is just, part of that a little bit. Interesting enough, though, this has a live action adaptation that is far longer than the anime. It has 4 seasons, I think, and the Wikipedia article said there was a 5th season planned for January of 2020, but I didn't see anything that said that actually aired, so I don't know. It might have, and just no one bothered to update the Wikipedia page for the live-action version of Wakako Zake. Or maybe it didn't get through. Who knows? But, yeah, it's a weird show. I don't know if I'd honestly recommend it. It is only 2-minute episodes, so really, if you're even a little bit interested, I'd say just go and just watch the whole thing, because it will take you the length of one episode of any other real anime. But if this show had episodes any longer than 2 minutes, like, I would have hated it. But it was just short enough that I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of funny. I like her faces enough. I don't know if it would carry anything more than what's already in here, but it's okay. But I would probably give this an AFAA. Honestly, I would give this a 6. There's not a whole lot here. If you're a big alcohol connoisseur, then I guess it might be cool to see it. Could be like, oh, I know that one. But I mean, a lot of it's so Japanese. Unless you are a Japanese person or go there a lot, you might not even get that out of it. Maybe it'll inform you if you ever go and want to go bar hopping. But I don't know. And also, Richard, I remember you mentioning there are a lot of memes about this show, so I went and looked them up. And you were right, they were very 4chan-ish. Like, referencing 4chan boards by name and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe there was some, like narrative or, like, conversation that used these memes I found. But, like, I don't know, they weren't that funny. It also seemed like... the main one I saw was when she goes Pashu, the subs say A Lamau. And I don't know if that was a real fan sub or if someone just made that for a Photoshop. My subs didn't seem to have a separate track that did that, so I don't know. But I didn't find any that I was super impressed with, to be honest. There were a lot, but
there's the one that I remember that went around for a little while that people would always spread and stuff. And it's the one where, like, someone takes, like, off one of the episodes and, like, completely writes over the subs or whatever, and talks about how, like, she's like, oh man, these are great. I can't wait to go back to work for the Fuhrer or whatever. And, like, people were like, I have it saved, and I can send it later, or I can send it now.
Is it just one episode?
It is just one episode.
Oh, you had sent it to me later, because I do want to check it out.
But
it does sound kind of funny.
It's pretty interesting. But some people, like, when they first saw this, they're like, "Is this really what the show is about?" And, like, would go to see it and then be like, "No, this is not what the show's about."
People actually believed it was real.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh yeah, I can confirm that the actual show both real subtitles and the real Japanese, do not talk about Hitler whatsoever. In fact, she's just talking about getting them booze. But yeah, like I said, I'd probably give this an AFAA 6, you know. But at the same time, check it out if you're even a little bit interested, because it's so goddamn short. It's so easy to just watch and be like, now I've seen the whole thing. I guess best girl is Wakako, the main girl and only character, really. There's other people around in the background, like bartenders and other bar goers that kind of say stuff in the background related to what she's eating. But she's really the only character, so I guess Wakako is best girl. So, Richard, would you please tell us about Blood Blockade Battlefront?
I will tell you about the Triple B, and from what I have learned from watching the show, there is no battlefront, there is no blockade, but there is blood. And I'll be honest, when I watched this show, like, I don't know if I wasn't paying attention enough, or if that's just how the show is, but it didn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like they expected me to know some certain things, or they were like, you got to put the pieces together yourself. But I feel like they didn't give me enough pieces to put everything together. And then,
are you sure you didn't watch season 2?
I'm sure I didn't watch season 2.
Okay.
And because it was a cool show to watch. It was very interesting, and I liked the whole I guess world they're in, because their world is basically something happened in New York in some year or whatever, and they get stuck in this sort of world bubble thingy or whatever, where there's all sorts of different dimensions that sort of intersect. So there's Cthulhu looking monsters and other sorts of weird people walking around oh, this is just normal New York now. And to be honest, it's not much different from normal New York today anyway. But this kid is going to New York, and he's looking for this group called Libra, and Libra is a secret society group or whatever, but not secret enough that they don't have business cards for some reason. So they which they hand out, and I'm like, that's not very secretive. But he goes to the city, and he's like, I gotta find these people, and the reason why he has to find these people is because he wants help with his sister and himself, because some monster thingy, weird elder dude showed up one day and was like, hey, one of you make a decision, whose eyes am I gonna take, and I'll give you some new eyes in return. And his sister's like, you can take my eyes, because his sister's like, I'm already in a wheelchair, losing my sight wouldn't be much worse. But he goes into the city or whatever to find out, one, how to get his sister's eye back, and also two, how to also get his sister's legs to work too. And they're like, oh, this secret organization will be the key.
Trying to fix two birds with one stone.
That's right. But he goes in the city, he finds this group or whatever, and the Libra group that he runs into, he was like, okay, I found you all, but really they found him, and they found him in the most incorrect way possible. They were looking for someone else with the same first name, and they just happened to pick him up with the same first name, and they were like, bro, this is the wrong dude. When he comes back, and they're like, oh, he's like, why did you lie to us? And he's like, because I need help. And they're like, okay, well, you're in, you can join. And so he's part of this super secret organization. And it's the first couple episodes of the show are kind of standalone things or whatever, and they kind of try to establish certain lore things, but I'm like, I don't get it. There's not enough information. I don't get it or whatever. But some of them are also hey, let's just bull around New York City or whatever. There's one episode where there's this mushroom dude or whatever, and he's like, hey, I'm a mushroom, and he's like, I just want to eat hamburgers. So they go to the burger joint and eat hamburgers, and that's the majority of the episode is them eating hamburgers with some mushroom dude. There's all sorts of craziness, but as you get further on, they sort of start establishing some certain lore things where it's like the city's like almost always under constant threat or whatever from just random outside events or whatever, and they're mostly caused by like this like vampire group or like I don't remember what they're exactly called, but they're like vampires, and they're like these vampires, they are bad, and we must stop them. Basically, the vampires just go in the city, mess up the city, drop in a bunch of things, and it's their job to just kind of clean them out, make sure that the vampires really don't do too much damage, but at the same time somehow remaining as a secret organization. There's also like 4D chess where they play like the god of chess or something like that, and he's like, if you can entertain me for this long playing chess, I'll grant you one wish. And this is like episode 2, and I'm like, why? And like their wish is just like to find like a single piece of information. They're like, can you tell me where this came from? And it's
he
like,
didn't wish for his sister's eyes and legs.
no, because it wasn't him who was playing chess. It was another character who was like, it was like going in there or whatever to look for information because they're looking for some dude or whatever. But like, the majority of the show is just super confusing. I feel like it's like all over the place and all over the wall. And there's really, like I said there was blood in there, but to be honest, the only real blood is like people either dying or getting hit on the street or something like that, or this one of the other characters who like uses his blood to like create like a sword that is also like a string that is also flammable, which it's
Flammable
really
blood?
Yeah, it's like flammable blood. So like what he does is he like pulls his blood out or whatever, and it's like attached to the sword or whatever. It's like along like a string sort of that's like coming out of him, and he like takes a lighter and like lights the lighter, and it just explodes or whatever, or anything that I guess is like around it explodes or whatever as soon as he like touches the fire to the blood. And I'm just like, they really don't explain too much of that. There's another guy who shows up later who can do the same thing sort of with his blood, except he can use like wind with it instead of fire. And it's like, oh, that's cool, but there's just not like I feel like enough lore that they try to establish in this world. I'm trying to think what other weird things in the show. There's this our main character. He really is just like a little small little cuck boy. He doesn't really do much. He finds this girl or whatever who's like, she's like, I'm a ghost or whatever, and they really don't explain that because she's like there and she's like always in the hospital and stuff. I don't remember too much why she's always in the hospital. They really didn't explain too much about it. And he goes to see her a lot, and he's like, I kind of like this girl or whatever. They try to establish a thing with them throughout most of the series. There's there's really there's really not too much to the show. The show literally is like random all off the walls, except for like the last like maybe like 4 or 5 episodes where they try to like make a story where they're like, all right, this is how it all connects, and it really does. It really, to me, just didn't connect all the way, because maybe I missed something. Maybe it was me, but I was like, I don't fully get what's happening here. But it was still kind of cool, and it was still nice. Also, the last episode, I was like, oh, it's gonna just be like a regular 24-minute episode. Now the last episode is like 50 minutes. I was not expecting that. And I was like, I don't understand now, because Mal needs to change that, and they're not all 24. They need to list episode 12 as like 50 minutes, because I really wasn't expecting that, because that threw me off. I had to watch it a different time, because I was like, oh, I'll just this will be perfect timing, and they're like, no, you don't get to do that. You gotta sit here for 50 minutes and watch this episode. and then they have an OVA. The OVA, this is what I say. Maybe the OVA is better because the OVA I felt like explained a little bit more, but it wasn't perfect. The OVA is literally just a recap of all 10 episodes or the first 10 episodes in like one big thing. So it's in 24 minutes too, like even shorter than the last episode. And I really don't know much more to say. This show was very interesting. It was very fun to watch. There were lots of weird, cool monsters up here. There were lots of fancy things. There are lots of different powers and sort of things, but to be honest, they really didn't use them that much. It was a lot more about just like chilling in New York City with weird monsters everywhere and being a goofball, I guess.
Well, what would your AFAA score be, Richard?
If I had to rate the show, I'd actually give it like, I don't know. I want to give it like, to be honest, I want to give it a 7, but at the same time, I want to give it an 8 because I did enjoy it and I did have fun. So you know what? I'll give it a 7. Or no, I'll give it an 8. But it's because it's a rounded 7. Yeah. So it was fun.
Oh, who's best girl?
Best girl was the Ghost Girl. Ghost Girl was really good because Ghost Girl is like people can call me a real Smash Bros professional because I'd smash things and that are
you smash your bros.
Yeah, I'd smash my bro. No, no, because I'd smash things that are. But
oh my god,
that's incriminating evidence right there. Look at that. But
I'll bleep it. It'll be fine.
Only in anime though. In the real world, no. That's a whole different story. In anime, yeah, I'll go for it. No, but this is all part of the experience. But Ghost Girl was really good. Ghost Girl is voiced by like the same voice actor who does like Taiga and stuff like that. So, and I think she's always in Aria and trying to think of other connections, but she does a lot of voices. She's got that same voice. She's really ganky, really spunky, but also ghosty. So, but
I'd be concerned if the ghost wasn't ghosty.
Maybe season 2 will explain more. Maybe I will explain more if I watched it better. But I watched it. I looked at the screen for the time that it was there. I did my best. So I can't say I would fully recommend this show, but like I guess I don't know. It's in that weird category of would I recommend this show, but would I not? I wouldn't recommend this show. So it's a custy field. I don't know what to really say. It was fun. It was nice, and I say move along to. I want to hear how a Vandal Buster gets beaten.
Yes, Michael, tell us all about Beat the Vandal Buster.
Okay, so Beat the Vandal Buster originated as a manga that began in 2002. It then went on a hiatus after 2006 when the author got injured. It got one new volume in 2016 and one new volume in 2019. So despite being a shonen, I wouldn't call it long running because there's like 55 total chapters. And the newer ones are decades after the previous ones with no content in between. And so the anime that I watched is 52 episodes and ran from 2004 to 2005. And there was a sequel anime from 2005 to 2006 that I didn't watch. So I don't know how the story ends, or rather ends prior to the author's injury. So probably not fully done. Maybe he'll eventually finish his story one day, but it seems like the going is slow. In this world, it's pretty simple. There are big monster guys called Vandals, and Vandal Busters are the guys that fight them. to become a Vandal Buster, you get a brand or tattoo put on your chest that displays your level. And after killing a bunch of them, you sort of innately level up, but then you can go to like the guild and they'll alter your tattoo to reflect your actual level. And that's how you scare people off, as being like, look, I'm level 30. And they're like, uh-oh, I'm only a 3-star Vandal. I'd better run away.
Wait, so the Vandals have levels too?
Yeah, but they're expressed as stars, not as numbers. And it's like different. So like a 7-star Vandal is really, really powerful, but a really, really powerful Vandal Buster would be like level 40.
Okay.
And both sides have magic, but I think the good guy magic uses a different type of particle than the bad guy magic. But they're similar in what they do. Just some of the interactions in the show makes it seem like, because they can cancel out the good guy magic by putting stuff in the air, and the bad guy magic still works. So I think it's like they each come from different particles or something. I don't know. And then in addition to the magic, they have their sort of ultimate ability, where it's like it's basically always a weapon. It is always a weapon. And you make it, and it's like, this is the weapon that is special to me, and no one else has it or can use it. And it usually has some power, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just a gun that shoots. And so Beat is a young boy that he wants to become a Vandal Buster because he's seen this group going around called the Xenon Warriors, and there's a group of 5 fellas, and they beat up Vandals, and he's like, I want to be like you guys. And they're like, you don't want to be like us, it's a hard life fighting. And he's like, but you guys work for justice. And they're like, no, we don't fight for justice. And he's like, well, do you get paid for fighting these monsters? And they're like, well, some people do, but we don't get paid. So he's like, so you're fighting for justice? And they're like, yeah, I guess we are. Thank you for telling us, Beat. We didn't realize. And Beat has a GF kind of sorta named Pawala. He's like, you're gonna marry me one day, and she doesn't dispute this fact, but she does call him a baka, so they got kind of that going on. But one day a big scary Vandal shows up, a 5-star, and he's like, I'll become a 6-star if I kill you guys. And he pretty much does. They're all dying, and Beat shows up, and they're like, oh no, Beat's here, he's gonna get hurt. So all the dying Xenon warriors gather around Beat, and they're like, we will protect you by doing this. We're going to transfer all of our special weapons into you, so you're going to actually have 5 unique weapons, and also run away. Also, by the way, Xenon, the leader of the group, at this point he chooses to reveal, Beat, I'm actually your older brother. Our family decided not to tell you so that you wouldn't have to deal with the stress of knowing your brother was a Vandal Buster. Now I am dead. And that's episode 2, so it moves along pretty quickly.
Wow, that's a lot going on in just 2 episodes.
Yeah. So there's a time skip, and for the rest of the show, basically they're going around, Beat and Pawala, to beat up some of these higher level Vandals. And Beat's whole goal is, I want to end the Dark Century. I want people to be happy, and basically there to be no more Vandals. And also I want to kill that one that killed my older brother, who I loved so dearly and knew for like 2 days. Also, the towns these people live in, they all have gates which are alive. And it's like a stone carved gate, but they all have eyes that like look around and talk to people and decide who to let in and who not to. That's never explained how that works. It just does. So, they go on their sort of adventure, and it's very like, here's this bad guy, he works for this other guy, and if you beat enough of his underlings, maybe you'll get to the actual guy. And, they sort of go through that shtick. New characters are introduced along the way, though, who have pretty funny names. There's Beat's ex-friend named Kiss, and Kiss ended up working for the bad guys, who, not by choice, the bad guy can put bracelets on you that will poison you if you disobey, so you have to be bad. And also there's a girl that joins them a few times, and her name is Milfa, which is very funny to me. And her thing is she uses lightning powers. Beat, he doesn't know how to do the magic. All he can basically do is use the 5 special weapons. Like his older brother's sword, which is his favorite, called Excellion Blade. And it's a pretty cool designed weapon, I gotta say. It's a big sword, but it has feathers coming out the back end of it, like the non-cutty part of the blade. And sometimes they move. And I don't know if they help it swing faster or what they're for, but I really like the look of the feathers. So, they fight some guys. They eventually get to the one who killed the fellows. And after a long, drawn-out fight, and using all 5 of the powers that the fellows gave to him, he manages to kill this dude. But then a guy shows up and he's like, that was actually the phantom of the real dude. The real dude is 5 times more powerful than that. So their journey is not over. They have a few side quests where they're like, we gotta stop this other green guy. He's called the Dark Green Tactician, and he's green. And we gotta beat him up because he's making ash or something. This whole area is dark, and they can't see the sun. If we beat him up and kill all his monsters, they'll eventually see the sun. So they do that, and then they get arrested by Milfa because Kiss worked for the bad guys, but it was all a misunderstanding. They beat up the green guy. That was a big fight. It's basically, it's shown and stuff. So every time they beat an enemy, a new one appears. And sometimes he's stronger, and it's like a big thing. And sometimes he's weaker than the previous enemy, which makes him a joke. And that's pretty much the whole show. By the end, they're teasing that they're going to go to a new continent, and they haven't gotten on the boat yet. And the last episode of this first series, and I know there's a second one that probably finishes the story, or at least brings it further. It ends with one of the bad guys being like, I'm going to consult with the creator of all the monsters and vandals. He's very scary, and he hears very well, but we don't get to see him. Also, the vandals have monsters, minions that work for them. And the way they get these minions is by buying them with dark currency from a hotel. The hotel is what sells the monsters. It doesn't seem to provide lodging. What? I don't know why they call it the hotel. It's the Vandal Hotel. That's pretty much the story. I mean,
damn, dude.
there's episode by episode stuff, but for the most part, they're just going on a journey, and they'll run into a strong guy, and then there'll be a few episodes of them figuring out how to beat him.
Do the Vandal Busters ever get beat?
A couple times they'll get beat or captured, or the beat will be asleep, and the rest of them have to figure out how to do it without his help, because if he uses too much energy, he falls asleep for 2 days at a time. So they have to drag his ass around and figure out ways to beat him without beat.
Is Paulina, Beat's girlfriend, I think that was her name, Paulina.
Paula.
Is she...
Or Paula. It's it rhymes with koala.
Pawala. Is Pawala also a Vandal Buster, or is she just kind of there?
She, in the intervening... There was a 3-year time skip at the beginning. He ran off basically to fight stuff. She became the Vandal Buster for that town in his absence. But she has not unlocked a special weapon yet. She just uses the normal magic. She has a pink monkey that follows her. And she has a wrist-mounted gun thing. And that's what she fights with.
All 52 episodes, she didn't have a special weapon?
No. Milfa has a special weapon, which is a... You know those devices that you use to, it's a grabby claw? It's like a novelty thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, hers is a big one of those.
Oh.
Normally how she fights is she does Pikachu's down B, and gets, electrified, and then she can chop stuff up with her hands and electricity. And Kiss, I don't think he's unlocked his one yet either, but... Actually, no, he's not a Vandal Buster. He's just a normal magic user. And he's very good at magic, so he doesn't really need a special weapon. So they're all kind of different from each other, which is nice. And
cool.
Beat has 5 weapons. He has a spear that's on fire. He has the big sword. He has a gun, which is what he mostly uses. He has a shield, but the shield is ridiculous, okay? The shield is a shield. It can do the thing where it absorbs power and then shoots it back at someone. It can turn into a ball and chain, and it can also... shove poison out of people.
Huh?
Twice he does this, where one of his teammates is deathly ill from getting poisoned by somebody. He stabs his shield into the ground, makes the person levitate, and then the poison just gets pushed out of their body and makes a shadow on the wall behind them, made of the poison that got pushed out of their body. And that's what the shield can do. It's the most versatile weapon ever. Oh, and he also has a big axe. Its power is that it's really big. That's the last one he figures out how to use.
Which one was his brother's?
His brother's was the sword with the feathers on it.
Okay. His brother didn't have the amazing shield?
No, one of his brothers...
It sounds like they were all kind of cucked by whoever had the shield that can do 70 things.
I guess, but like we never get to see the 5 of them fight very much because they're all dead by episode 2, so it's more like... It's for the most part, it's Beat has to figure out which one's good for the situation, or sometimes he'll use 2 at once, usually the sword and usually the shield and the gun, because you can have each of those with one hand. For the most part, though, he uses the fire spear just because it's... I don't know, I guess so it's more impactful when he pulls out his brother's sword. But yeah, let's beat the Vandal Buster. I'd probably give it a 6. You know, it's not great. It's not bad. It's, if we call 5 average, which it isn't for AFAA, but that was the original theory. It is above average. I wouldn't put it up there with other AFAA shows, especially being 52 episodes. There wasn't a lot of amazing things in it for being 52 episodes. Oh, and the studio that made it, maybe you've heard of it. It was called Toei Animation. They made 787 shows according to my anime list. And yeah, so I haven't watched the sequel series. Maybe I will, but I don't expect it to be done because, like I said, it ended the same year as the manga went on hiatus, which happened because the author got injured. So it probably wasn't at its real stopping point.
And who is Best Girl, Michael?
Best Girl is obviously Milfa.
Well, guys, it's one more show. My last pick. Some would call it the bottom of the barrel, but there was one more at the very bottom that we were elected not to use. That was that was part of the rules, is we got one to throw away, and the one I picked was Yadamon, Magical Dreamer. Now the reason this one was kind of left for last is because it is 170 episodes long. And the episodes are only 10 minutes, so like half the length of a normal anime episode. But that still translates to 85 normal anime-length episodes worth of content. So this show is about Yadamon. She's a girl. She's the magical dreamer. Alright, I think we've finished this episode of AFAA. We can go ahead and... No, I'm just kidding. Because I watched 170 episodes of this within 1 month, and I have a page and a half of single-spaced 11-point font notes that I am damn well going to talk about. This anime is from 1992 to 1993. We limited our search when we picked these to 1990 and up, so this is pretty much as old as we could have gotten. Minus a couple years. What's really fun about Yadamon Magical Dreamer is that out of the 170 episodes, 155 of them are not translated. So I watched the first 15 episodes, which had a fan sub, and then I watched the next 155 without it. Very
gosh.
Lucky that I minored in Japanese and are pretty decent at listening and comprehension, listening comprehension. Because honestly, I feel like I missed very little watching this show just with the Japanese and no English subs. So I'm very grateful that I'm the one that got this, because I don't know what you guys would have done. I guess just watch 15 episodes and leave. Which I guess I could have done, but I'm no coward, so I watched them all. I am not going to fool you guys. Yadamon Magical Dreamer is a show for children. It is a children's show. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it is super deep show for adults, and they were going to make it for children, but really, all ages can learn from it. I mean, this is a children's show. That said, this show is extremely good. Maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, but I love this anime so much. I'm so glad I've watched it. It is for children. There are morals and stuff in it, and It's about a kid going around doing kid stuff a lot of the times, but it is a very good show. I love all the characters. I love the stories that are in it. It's just good. I'll get into the details now, and maybe you'll see my why I like it so much along the way. So this show follows Yadamon, who is a little girl who's she's a witch, but she's been banished from the witch's forest. Later we find out it's because she was being fucking annoying, and her mom's like, get the fuck out of here. And she kicks her out to the human world. But Yadamon doesn't really care, because she's just out here to have a good time at all times. And, she's a kid. She's like, oh, yay, this is a fun adventure. So she is banished to the human world. I think she was annoying, and also she was booling around in the fairy forest. Now, you wouldn't believe this, but the witches and the fairies aren't super big fans of each other. They have their own forests, which are really more of dimensions than forests somewhere in the world. They're separate from Earth and each other. I think they're separate from each other. I'm pretty sure they're in different, spaces from each other. But she, kind of bulls with the fairies sometimes, and her mom's like, you're being annoying and you're bothering the fairies, which we don't really get along with them. So you're going to Earth, and you're going to stay there, even though you don't know a lot of magic yet, because you're just a child. And I'm just for a while, I'm just not going to raise you or teach you. So she sends her Yadamon to Earth, and Yadamon runs into a little boy. Not little boy. He's a few years older than her. I think she's 10, so he'd be 13, 14. His name is John, but spelled the French way. And he finds her hanging out with a lion, and he's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on here. What you need to know about John is that he is, what's the PC way to say this? He is a femboy? Is that a very effeminate child? I guess he's still, young, so it might just be, prepubescent, and he's kind of shy and stuff, and he's, I'm sure those socks looked good on him at the time, but, I mean, he's not a programmer, so I don't know why he's wearing those programming socks, guys. But he's kind of a scaredy cat. He's a little shy boy, and he's like, oh, no, a lion, what's this little girl doing? And they sort of make a connection out there in the forest, and he breaks her back to his parents. And the whole time she's like, I'm Yadamon, I'm a witch from the magic forest. And they're like, haha, you're a lost kid, we'll find your parents. Not believing her at all. She's not even trying to hide the fact that she's a witch. She's like, I'm a witch from the witch forest. They're like, okay, Yadamon, you 10-year-old idiot. But Yadamon is very soonly joined by a fairy she met in the fairy forest named Taimon, the Time Fairy.
Oh.
Taimon is one of the best characters in the entire show, if not the best character. He's kind of a mascot character. He's a little orange guy, and I was trying to figure out for a long time why he's an instantly endearing, design. And then it struck me, finally. He's small, but his proportions and, sort of shape is almost exactly Big Chungus. And it's just amazing. He's such a good... I've never been into mascot characters, right? I'm like, oh, that's a little flying thing. It has a funny face. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Taimon is so good. Taimon is the best little dude. And he talks, and he's like, he basically came there because he loves Yadamon. That part's kind of weird. I thought they were just friends. Maybe he loves her in a friend way. But that's sort of a thing later on. You're like, oh, Taimon loves Yadamon. But she's, he's kind of young too. But, I mean, she's 10, so I don't know. But he's there to protect her and help her. And she doesn't really treat him very well. But his whole thing is he has time magic. And he can stop time by bouncing up and down and saying, time on time on time. And he flips upside down and becomes a clock. And then time is stopped. And normally Yadamon, she sucks at magic. She's just a kid. She doesn't know how to use it. She can only fly on her magic broomstick when it's a full moon. But when Taimon freezes time, for some reason she can also fly like nothing's wrong when time is frozen. So, she gets taken in by the family, and so does Taimon. They know Taimon's there, but they think he's just some weird animal. John's parents, Dr. Edward and Dr. Maria, I don't know if they ever say their last name. If they do, it's very brief. They usually just call her like Edward Hakase and Maria Hakase, which is Dr. Edward, Dr. Maria, and they both kind of deal with animals, but Maria is a straight up zoologist. So they're sort of like, they try to hide. There's a fun arc where they try to hide Taimon from them for a little bit, and because they're like, Maria will dissect this animal to figure out what it is, so we can't let her find it. And they thought that about the dad too, but then he finds it and he's like, oh no, I would never hurt this animal, but Maria will dissect this animal. So there's a fun thing where he has the exact same colorations as their Roomba. By the way, predates Roombas. Yadamon invented Roombas. And he pretends to be one, and she's like, and at the end she's like, what the fuck is this? I'm a zoologist. I know that's not a Roomba. And, oh, it's Taimon. And Taimon doesn't talk in front of them. He just goes, meow, 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 meow. Because they're not supposed to know he's a fairy. They think he's just some weird animal they haven't discovered. Which is kind of because of where they are, and I'll get into that in a second. But she's like, I would never hurt Yadamon's friend, but I am curious. And they're like, oh, but they're still a little worried. But, she never dissects Taimon, luckily. They're all cool with Taimon. And a lot of the show is them having sort of episodic adventures, that family, and focusing a lot on Taimon and Yadamon. Where she's like slowly throughout the course of the 170 episodes learning magic and like sort of growing up. However, Yadamon is written absolutely like a child, through and through. Like a lot of shows, they'll have like a little girl character, but she'll act mature, or like she just won't talk like a real kid talks. Yadamon is stupid, she's selfish, and oh my god, is she easily tricked. The whole like last arc of this show is like an evil witch basically just gaslighting and grooming Yadamon to just like use her for her own devices, and Yadamon's like, haha, we're friends. But that's one thing I really like about this show, is that Yadamon is a child and she's acting like a real child would, where she's just kind of an asshole and kind of annoying sometimes. But she's so happy all the time that she's still so lovable. So I don't know where exactly this takes place, because everyone has like an English name, but the only place they ever claim to be is this island called Rando, which is also called the Animal Island. And it seems to be some sort of animal sanctuary where a lot of the people who live there are like work with animals, are like studying animals, which is why John and his family are here, because both his parents study the animals. And also for some reason have like some super advanced technology for zoologists. I don't know if they also invent things or if that's just the norm in this world, but they've got some pretty crazy shit at their disposal. And there's like a school, there's a whole society there. It's kind of like what I imagine it's like for military people who live in like Okinawa or somewhere, where it's like, yeah, I'm in a different country and stuff, but like there's a whole community of people like me because like other people are also here for the same reason. So there's like a small community. And that's sort of like the main characters, but there's lots of like really good side characters. Every character in the show is so good. Like John has a classmate named Hannah. She's like a forehead thought, and he's really into her. They kind of have a thing. There's like a bully named Rick. He's kind of a bully, but really he's more of just like kind of a bastard. Like he's not out to get John. In fact, I think he thinks he's kind of friends with John, but he's just such an asshole that when they hang out, he's always like ends up inadvertently bullying John. Sometimes on purpose, but and then there's some of my favorite. There's two brothers named Bucci and Enrico, and Bucci is kind of like a failed zoologist who went to school with Edward, John's dad, and he and his brother come back to steal. Oh my god, I didn't mention the egg. The same time the same time Yadamon appears in the Earth world, John's parents find this big egg growing out of a weird plant, and they take it to their lab to study. And it's just sort of like in the background the whole show. There's an arc when Bucci and Enrico first show up, they try to steal the egg because he's a disgraced zoologist, and he's like, this will bring me fame. And at one point Enrico holds a knife to John's neck, and I'm like, that's pretty funny. But then they fail because Yadamon does things a human shouldn't be able to do. And, like, she's not using magic when she does them. She's just kind of like a freak. Like, she could scale this huge research facility, and she uses a hairdryer to, like, to grapple up to a helicopter flying away with Bucci and Enrico and the egg. And she points the hairdryer at him like, oh, give the egg back. And they're like, fuck, this girl has a gun. So from that point onward, they call her like Super Lady or Super Girl, like Super Onanoko. Funny voices like that. And the reason they come back is because they just appear in a future arc, and they're like, hey, sorry about that. Can we work for you? And he's like, oh, I don't care. Yeah, you can work for me. So they work for Edward and Maria for the rest of the show, and they're like nice people. But you always have to remember in the back of their mind that Enrico held a knife to John's neck. Very funny. So, like, you know, they have this cast of characters, and they go on sort of adventures. It has sort of, like, the pacing of it and the framing of the show has a lot of different frames. So, like, for the first 85 episodes, they split up into 5 episodes arcs. I think because it aired every weekday, so every week you got a new arc that aired throughout the week of 10-minute episodes. Which sort of makes it... That was something I was wondering about when I was watching it, and then I looked this up, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Because it is, like... Really, each story in this area is like a 50-minute story. Like, they're not that short when you string them together. And they really feel like if you don't string them together, not a lot's happening. So, I don't know how kids liked that, if they really liked that or not. But that's sort of how it is. And then from episode 86 to 113, the episodes are fully standalone and episodic, where the things that happen don't really affect... the other stuff in the show. And that's honestly my least favorite part of the show, was this chunk of episodes, with the exception of episode 101, which is my favorite episode, and I will talk in detail about what happens in that one later, because it's extremely good. But this is sort of like the low point of the show for me. I was a little worried that the rest of the show, all the way up to 170, was going to be like this, and I was like, oh, I was enjoying the first half so much. This is going to be kind of a drag if the rest is like this, because it's just, this is when it's the most, like, kids show. Like, Yadamon does something dumb, she gets a Batsu mark, which is, for some reason, when Yadamon does something bad, she gets a literal bad girl mark on her face. It's just an X appears, and it makes, like, a slapping sound. She's like, oh no, Batsu Marku! And she has to make it right to, like, fix it. So it seems like every episode in this section, she does something, like a dipshit child would do, and she gets a Batsu mark. She's like, oh no, I will fix this with magic, because at this point she learned how to use her magic brooch to sort of do magic here and there. In the first 85 episodes she learned that, and she just like fixes it with magic, and she's like, I learned a little bit of a lesson today, and then that's it. So that's kind of the low point. But then in episode 114 and onward, it starts this continuous story. It's not 5 episode arcs. This is a, let me do the math real quick. 56 episode arc? It just continues on and on from where it left off. And not only that, it gets kind of dark, actually. Especially towards the end. Like, y'all, I can't believe I'm saying this. People die in this show.
No way.
People die in Yadamon. And it starts getting into, like, the conflict with, like, the magic forest, the fairy forest, and Earth. Although Earth isn't really part of the conflict. It just kind of sort of becomes that because they yeeted Yadamon over there. And she's apparently actually, like, very strong. Or she will be one day. Like, she has a lot of magic potential. And it ends up with Kira, the villain of the story, whose name I I'm not gonna say that Death Note stole the name from Yadamon Magical Dreamer. But let's just say Light Turner might have been a fan. Kira is the villain of this last arc, which in a show that did not have a villain previously at all. It was just kind of like Bullin. And she's like corrupting Yadamon all through these episodes, and Yadamon's like, yeah, Kira is my friend, why are you all so mean to her? And they're like, she's literally called the Witch of Darkness, and her name is Kira. Like, what are you doing, Yadamon? She's like, you're just bullying her. And honestly, the ending, I'll talk about the ending a little. No, I can talk about it now. Because, like, I was a little disappointed with the ending. It, like, this whole arc with the actual conflict and stuff, it was good. Like, it was a good anime. It was the most, like, a non-kids anime that this show gets. However, like, the ending, it's kind of fast, and it doesn't, I would have liked it to end on more of a, like, Bull, like, hey, we're back to normal, and now I'm hanging out with John and the family again. But it ends, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this, because it's almost impossible for most people who probably listen to this program to watch this, because it's almost entirely in Japanese without translations. It ends with Yadamon, and this is kind of confusing. I believe she teleported everyone out of Earth onto space while Kira destroyed the Earth, and then recreated Earth and put everyone back. And then teleports to the fairy forest and just live, or not the fairy forest, the witch forest, and lives there forever. And that's my interpretation. Again, some of the stuff with the story I might be a little bit off with because it was all in Japanese, and I'm not a native speaker, so some stuff might have gone over my head. That part I think was especially confusing.
Did she do anything with Kira? Is she dead or imprisoned or something?
I think Kira died destroying Earth.
Okay.
She definitely, like, fought Kira in this last episode, and, like, Kira steals Yadamon's form. She was originally going to take over Yadamon as a whole, but she was stuck in Yadamon's magic brooch for a while, and she felt herself becoming good, and she's like, fuck, this plan ain't gonna work. So she tricks Yadamon into helping her create a dark clone of Yadamon, which is still Kira, but she looks like Yadamon. But no one's fooled, because she talks like Kira and does evil things. And she never appears before anyone who isn't, like, aware of what's happening. So there's not actually any clone tomfoolery really going on. It just gives her a physical form, because Kira was previously basically killed by Yadamon's mom and, like, her teacher, the person who taught both Kira and Yadamon's mom magic. And she had no physical form, and she was stuck in the egg. The egg is bad news. The egg was actually very bad, and they probably should have never picked it up. Because that's where Kira comes out of and starts to cause trouble. And, yeah, I wish it had ended on a note where they could all still hang out. Because it's just, like, everyone goes back to where they were. It was pretty much like how it was before Yadamon even got there. And, like, it's not like people forgot. Like, at the end, John was, like, leaving for school, and he looks back at the house, and he's like, I'll be back, Yadamon. Even though Yadamon's not there. She's back in the, like, witch forest. So, like, they remember what happened. But, like, they were all having so much fun and being happy with Yadamon there. And it just ended in a way that it seemed like she's not even going to come back to visit. And that kind of, I didn't like that, because my favorite part of the show is, like, the early part, if you can call the first 85 episodes early, where, like, she's out having 50-minute adventures with everyone and, like, learning magic and stuff. And Bullin, it's just Bullin for the most of the show. So I kind of wish that had been reflected more in the end. But there's sort of a reason it changed the way it worked, because Yadamon actually, the first 110 episodes were, like, its first run, and then it started again on a different NHK channel. It started on a different NHK channel that was, like, an educational channel, which is crazy, because the last part that it aired on the educational channel is by far the least educational, and, like, the most, like, action anime-ish, and, like, magical girl-ish. It's sometimes getting a little bit kind of like Sailor Moon, with all the, like, fairy and, magic, like, magic forest type stuff going on. Like, they didn't show the magic forest or Yadamon's mom or any of the other fairy characters, except for Manatee Obasan, which is a talking manatee who sort of helps teach Yatamon. I don't actually know her deal. They might have explained it, but, Japanese. So she's a talking manatee. I don't know if she's a fairy or just helps them. But none of those characters are in the original run where they're just Bullin. All those characters are introduced when there's actually conflict introduced. So before, Yatamon's mom was kind of a mysterious character. Like, why is Yatamon here? What happened to her mom? Is her mom ever going to come back and teach her? And then we show the mom, and she's just kind of like, I don't know. She's supposed to be the queen of the witches, but she's just kind of like a mom. Like a single mom just going to hanging out, having fun with her kid not there. But also taking care of a country. So, like dealing with all the evil stuff going on. Really, I think she's kind of a bad mom for kicking Yatamon out and leaving her there for so long. Just for another family to raise. But, it is what it is. I'm sure, which culture is different. Don't judge other cultures. But let's see. I do want to... I already talked about the Enrico Bucci episode, but there's a few other pretty noteworthy parts, or at least parts I really liked that, just an example of sort of the adventures that go on. So, like, Yatamon, that lion in the first episode, they decided to make it a full character, so that's Caesar. He's a friendly lion who also has some sort of disease, and Yatamon is trying to get him to integrate with the lions on Animal Island, like in the sanctuary, but Edward, John's dad, is like, no, Yatamon, don't do that, he's sick. And she's like, no, this is where he belongs. And this is a really good episode, because at one point she breaks him out of, like, his containment, and as she's breaking out, she gets a Batsu mark, a bad girl mark on her cheek, but it doesn't faze her at all, and she just keeps going, because even though the world is telling her it's wrong, she thinks she's helping her friend Caesar, and she does not care what they do to her. I thought that was really good. But of course, then he collapses, and they have to take him back to containment. She's like, oh, I understand now. he needs to be here to live. There's one part that was like uncharacteristically high stakes for the first part, but it was one of the better arcs where this apparently Taimon is the prince of the fairies, by the way. And he got turned into this little ball form, little big Chungus form, because he disobeyed his dad and went to go help Yatamon in the Earth world, even though, witches and fairies, they don't get along. So he got cursed to be like that, and he's like, you'll be like this? Do you still want to go? And he's like, yes. He really loves Yatamon and will always be there by her side, even though she literally throws him around like a child with a cat. Like, she is so abusive of Taimon, it's ridiculous. But Taimon's always there by her. And this sand fairy comes from the fairy world to try to assassinate Taimon, so that he can take the like fairy like stone that's like the Saint Fairy Stone is like, I guess, your right to rule. And he's trying to steal it so that he can become the king of the fairies. And there's this whole thing where Yatamon has to learn how to trap evil energy in her magic brooch. Meanwhile, Taimon is like being hunted, and he's like trying to save another fairy that gets kidnapped, and she has to come in and help him. But what's really great about this is she steals a lot of the sand guy's power, and he escapes. But earlier in the episode, Yatamon and John were having a water gun fight, and he's still looking for Yatamon with his water gun, and he sees movement out of the corner of my eye. He shoots it. It was Bakudo, the sand fairy. I think he murders this fairy with a water gun. I think he dies, because he never shows up again. And John's like, oh, I thought I saw Yatamon. Has no idea he's just taken a life. But that whole arc was pretty good. But I do want to tell you about my favorite episode. I could go on and on about every arc of the show, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to... One last thing, my favorite episode about this in this show is when it was fully episodic, so it's fully contained. Episode 101. Yatamon goes by a hospital for some reason. I don't know why. And she sees a girl playing, and she starts playing with her, and they become friends. I don't remember the girl's name. I should have looked it up and wrote it down, but I don't remember. and she's she's living in that hospital right now. And Yadamon's like, oh, when are you gonna get to go home? And the girl's like, I'm not going to get to go home, I don't think. And Yadamon's like, oh, well, you're gonna be here forever? And she's like, no, someday I'm gonna go to a faraway place.
Oh no.
And Yadamon says, oh, like the fairy forest. The girl's like, I think even further than that. And they fly kites together. That's their whole thing. And something that Edward and Maria say makes it seem like that maybe she's been going to play with this girl for a few days now, like a while now. But really, it only shows the first day they meet, and then this next day. So it like looks like she's like this is the day after she meets her. Although I think it's implied that it's not. But she goes to the hospital again, and her friend's not out there flying a kite. She's like, what's happening? So she goes inside the hospital and finds her friend's room, and her friend is looking not well. She has an oxygen mask on, and her family's there.
Uh-oh.
She's like, Yadamon, I can't play today. And Yadamon's sort of like, this is the one thing about this episode is it's a little uncharacteristic for Yadamon. She's a little too mature. She understands what's going on, and she's like, I gotta go fly this kite for the both of us. So she takes the kite outside, and she flies it by the window of this girl, and she looks out and she sees the kite. She's like, Yadamon, thank you. And the kite string snaps in the strong wind, and when it snaps, the girl dies. And the kite flies away, and she's like, I can tell my friend is gone.
Oh my gosh.
This girl in this event is never mentioned again in the entire anime. They don't even mention there being a hospital. But there's just an episode in the smack dab in the middle of the show where Yadamon makes a friend with a terminal illness, and she dies the same episode.
Oh my gosh.
And that is my favorite episode of this show. Because I can't believe they did that. That's like some Minky Momo shit. This is a kid's show. This show is for children.
Yeah, imagine if Arthur did that.
Arthur could never do this. And it airs on NHK, which is like Japanese PBS. It's a little bit further than the fairy forest, guys.
Oh
it really
God.
is. Yeah, and like I know I said there's stuff later where people die, like Burial, who's the fairy who taught Yadamon's mom, who I don't think ever actually gets a name. Maybe she does and I just missed it. But Burial taught Yada's mom and Kira before Kira became evil. And she dies in a very horrific way, actually. Where Kira like coats the the magic forest. She actually annihilates the fairy forest. It gets destroyed in its entirety in this anime. But Yadamon's mom teleports everyone out before they die, which I guess is a family ability because it's the same thing Yadamon does to Earth and takes them to space. But the entire forest is destroyed by a mushroom cloud. Explosion. But then she's trying to do something similar to the magic forest where it's just covered in darkness, and Burial's like, I have to stop this. So she uses all of her power to suck all the darkness into her, and she becomes kind of like a dripping pulsating like tar monster, and she's like, Queen, finish me. And the queen turns around and just blasts her, and she like screams as she like eviscerates her. and then it starts raining, and the queen's like screaming in agony, and her assistant comes up, she's like, oh, the evil flowers are gone, the darkness is gone, and it's raining. She's like, Burial's last gift to our world. It's a show for children, and this is after they moved it to the educational channel of NHK. Just like shit like this is happening in this show. There's a part where like they show
death. That's education.
There's a part where they show an elephant with its leg like half scraped off, and like Hannah's father is like trying to heal it because he's also kind of like an animal guy. I don't think he's a scientist though. I think he's like a veterinarian or something. There's also an episode where her dad almost dies of a snake bite because of Hannah like accidentally removing his snake bite kit like from his pack. She didn't do it on purpose. She was like looking at something behind it and didn't realize she had moved it. And she has to like suck the poison out of his arm. I don't know, just sometimes it gets a little scary for kids, especially this villain. I feel like would be very scary for little kids who might have really liked the first part of this show. It's like she kills people, she destroys the fairy forest. Yadamon is like helpless in her like hands for like the majority of this section, actually. Like, I don't know, it gets so scary for kids. I can't imagine, like, I don't know. But like, this show was an original. After it was finished. However, in 1993, there is a Yadamon point-and-click adventure game for the Super Famicom. And that's the only other Yadamon content. But, in conclusion of this, I really like this show. I really like the characters. And I would really like to see this IP come back. I have no idea how popular it was in Japan. And the studio who made it shut down a decade ago. So, no idea who has the rights to Yadamon. No idea how much love there is out there for Yadamon. I feel like very few Americans have seen it, as only the first 15 episodes have English subtitles. So, I have no idea how widespread this is. I feel like not very, but I feel like it really deserves to be, because despite being a kid's show, it's quite good, and it might be Stockholm Syndrome, but I really like everything about the show, and I would love to see. I think what I'm most sad about the ending is that there's not more. I want 171 episodes at least, if not 200, 300. I want more Yadamon, guys. I never thought I'd say this when I started this journey, but I want more Yadamon. Do you guys have any questions? I realize I've been rambling for quite a bit.
No, I feel like your Yadamon manifesto was very thorough.
I really wish I could go into every single arc, because they all have something that, like, really good about them. It's honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that only 15 episodes of this show was subbed, I'd say it's a must-watch.
On an individual episode by episode level, would you say it's simple enough stuff that even without understanding it, just by being able to pick out names and watch the pictures, would an English-speaking viewer get anything out of that majority of the show?
Well, I did watch a few of them with my girlfriend, and she doesn't know any Japanese, and she seemed to be enjoying it. But she already really likes anime catered towards like 9-year-old Japanese girls. So I don't know if that's a fair representation of all anime viewers. So yes, it is pretty simple. Like, and the plots are pretty simple, and sometimes there's not even all that much dialogue. So yeah, I think you could get some out of it. And if you have like an elementary like level of Japanese, like a working knowledge, like more than just like I know Nani, then yeah, you'd probably do fine. Honestly, just watching the show, like you'd probably understand enough of it. I mean, I did, and I don't have that. Like, I'm not fluent. I'm pretty decent, but I'm not fluent. And I was understanding pretty much everything that was happening. At least I think I was. So that's yeah, I'd say maybe give it a shot. I'd say at least watch the like first 15 episodes that are actually translated, because they're only 10 minutes long, so honestly it's not even like a huge commitment to just watch that much. And I think those were pretty decent arcs. I think that's Yadamon shows up and they meet him. I think the Taimon one where they're trying to hide him so he doesn't get dissected. And I think the third one is Rick steals Hannah's notebook full of homework that John was copying, and John's like, oh shit, man, I gotta get that back for my girl. I think that was the third one, the other one that's translated. But I could be wrong about that. I don't remember exactly which one was the third one. You know, I just remembered about Taimon. He can also take Yadamon back in time, but he only uses it once ever, so I think they forgot he could do that. But that's in the first 15 episodes, so that'll be fun. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would give this an AFAA 9, but honestly, this is the kind of show where the more I think about it, and like, there very well could be a day I wake up one day and I think about Yadamon and I'm like, you know what, it's a 10. Because, like, I don't know, there's something so special about this show, and I feel like I feel so special for having seen it all, because I feel like very few people from America, I guess, have seen this whole show, and like at least seen it and understood most of it. So I don't know, if you know some Japanese, you know, maybe you want to go check out Yatterman. Maybe not though, because it is still. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not a kids show. It's a kids show. It's for children. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. And so I guess AFAA 9.
If you watched this show as a child in Japan and were traumatized and want to tell us about your experiences.
Fuck, dude, some kids probably were traumatized by some of the shit Kira did. Yeah, I mean, bring it on over. At one point, they... in like the dark part, they almost kill Yatterman by launching her into a volcano, and John like hits the button to launch it, and then immediately it's hers. No, don't do it. Yatterman's in there. He's like, oh no. But she was fine. Yeah, and I guess best girl, it might be Maria. Hana's kind of moe. It's hand drawn from the 90s, right? So like sometimes the characters are like really good looking and cute, and then sometimes the drawing did not pan out the way they wanted it to, and it's like very gross, like just not good drawing of that character. But I don't know, Maria's a really good character, and she's such a badass. At one point she rides a horse straight up a vertical wall of a building, and then jumps off of it and grabs onto a helicopter to save Edward and Bucci, who are up there. She's really cool. At one point, Yatterman turns himself invisible, and she thinks there's a ghost, and she's like, "Ghost, be gone!" and like whacks Yatterman with a broom, and Yatterman's like, "Oh shit! I was just trying to snag a cheeky donut." Yatterman loves donuts, and Taimon loves strawberries. That's one thing you gotta know about. You don't gotta know about them. I don't. The characters are honestly really good because there's so many small things that it's like that's a part of their personality, but it doesn't define them. And like it always comes back. It's very good at remembering things about the characters, except for that Taimon can take Yatterman back in time. They forgot that. But like remembering things that the characters like, the things they've done, and like their relationships is something the show's very good about, despite being very episodic. Anyway, this episode is extremely long, and I think I've said quite enough about Yatterman now. I do not regret the watch, which is, I can't believe that. But I don't regret it, and honestly, I'd do it again. I would rewatch Yatterman. Maybe not right now. But I guess that brings us to the end of this. Did you guys have fun watching these random anime this month?
Yeah, that was pretty fun. I wouldn't want to do it immediately after or anything, but we should do this again.
No, let's not do it for July, but I do want to do it again. It was a fun experience. Maybe we'll get shorter stuff next time.
Maybe.
Maybe we'll push up the date limit, but I don't know. Because, like, the only thing really old we got was Yatterman. That's my favorite thing I watched. So, who knows? We'll tinker around with it. We'll probably do this again in the future. But thank you all for listening. If you got this far and you enjoyed it, which I hope you enjoyed it if you listened to it this far, we actually have a Patreon, and thank you to our patrons, Spice and Lone Ranger 25, for supporting us on Patreon. If you too want to support it, you can go over there, patreon.com/AFAA, patreon.com/AFA. You can check it out. We have a Twitter at @the_real_AFA, where there's a tweet that goes out every episode, so you're always up to date with the new episode. If there's ever any updates about things coming out late or some bonus stuff coming out, it always goes up on the Twitter, so you also get updates like that. And if you just want to contact us, you can tweet us, or you can email us at animefansagainstanime@gmail.com. And I think that's it. I don't even know if we should do a sign-off for this one. Maybe we should just cut it, because it's already so long. What do you think, Richard?